Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children of all ages, hi. Welcome. This is a pleasure to have each and every one of you. My name is Mr. P.R. Miller. I am your host for this opening run of Questing for Glory, Hope and Healing, 2021 edition, number 2, Roman numeral number 2. 2 fingers up, you're good to go. It is my privilege to helping to raise money for the ever excellent NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And we have a ridiculously excellent schedule this year. It's kicking off with Xenoblade Chronicles 2, the definitive edition on the Nintendo Switch, as run by Orph, and also commented by Arcanite. It's going to be a fantastic run, and I'm sure most of you've seen the schedule, but if you haven't, I know somebody's going to post a link in there in a moment in chat. But it really is looking like it's going to be a real banger of a marathon, no doubt. But let's not forget why this marathon exists. We are here to raise money for NAMI, which is the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization. It's important because 1 in 5 Americans live with a mental health condition, and less than 50% of them will receive treatment each year for a variety of reasons, whether it's stigma, lack of awareness, lack of knowledge. NAMI pretty much helps with all of those. But suffice to say, it's okay to not be okay right now. We've had a rough couple of years, and it's important that you know you are not alone. NAMI gets it, and it is here for you. So visit NAMI.org for more information. And I am going to be doing a lot of posting on here, so let me say, go through some of this information. It'll be real quick. There's going to be a lot of talk of prizes and incentives. I'm not going to bog you down with all of that now, but for our first game, Xenoblade Chronicles, the definitive edition, there are 2 incentives that we would love to see met. And the first is a $150 donation towards fighting the territorial Rotbart. And what modern RPG isn't equipped with super bosses? And you can donate to fight those super bosses in the game. And, go to rpglimitbreak.com/donate, and you'll be able to see how you can do that, as well as a full prize list that you can see there of all the excellent prizes that we'll be talking about throughout the marathon. And you can also help to spread the word by getting the hashtag out there. That's hashtag QFGHH2. And NAMI definitely needs our help to get another hashtag out there. So if you're going to throw one hashtag out, get another together. TOGETHER, together 4MH. Now spread the word out so that way nobody really needs to feel alone right now. And you can also check out our German and Japanese restreamers at twitch.tv/Germensch and twitch.tv/Japanese_restream. Go show them some love also. But that was a huge info dump, and I know that you're not here to listen to me. You are here to see some excellent speedruns. It's going to be a really fun one. And I am going to pass you over to the excellent Orph and Arcanite, and who are going to guide you through Xenoblade Chronicles, the definitive edition. So, guys, whenever you're ready, it sounds like we're ready for you.
Are you feeling it? Yes, hello. I am Orpheolus here, speedrunning Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, New Game Plus, Arts Inheritance. What exactly is Arts Inheritance? Well, you're going to find out pretty soon. The main thing about this speedrun, though, is that it's going to be very chaotic and going to be using some strategies you probably will never have seen before, because this entire category is filled with chaos, and this is the first time Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, I believe, has been to a major marathon, especially this category, so hopefully you all enjoy. So today I'll be joined by a co-commentator. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey guys, I am Archknight. I am primarily a TA runner of this game, but more recently I've been doing some work for routing and running of this category as well.
Alright. I guess with this all done, let's go ahead and get started with this category. It's going to be a very fun one. Hopefully you all will enjoy the next 3 hours and hopefully additional time, as we got some very fun ways as we're going to fight the super bosses. So I guess with this all done, we're going to get started in about 10 seconds or so. Hopefully you all enjoy this, and let's get started in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, let's jam. Alright, so Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is a very fun game to say the least. The original version was released back in like 2010, 2011 in Japan, and it received an Operation Rainfall to get it over to the West, especially in America, because there wasn't really a port planned. However, though, eventually it got a port, the series became pretty massive, and it received numerous ports, including the Definitive Edition, which you've already seen. Things aren't quite as they seem. Gunband normally does not have Minato Cyclone. We'll get into the specifics of that pretty soon, but all you need to really know is Toms and Mechon are fighting 1 year prior to the events of Definitive Edition, so here we're just basically going through the battle here. Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting category as we're going to be using arts that are normally not on their characters, hence arts inheritance. We'll get into the specifics of that when we get to the bonus leg because it's pretty long. It's a pretty long area, all things considered. So first things first, what we're doing is that we're equipping the weapons we're going to be using for the run. When you transfer over to New Game Plus, any equipped gems will be de-equipped. However, though, you can keep them in your inventory with the gems equipped, and when you do New Game Plus, it'll transfer over. It'll save a lot of menuing here and there. We'll let Arcanite take over with some of the gems that we'll be using throughout the run.
So the first and most important gem of this category, and really any Xenoblade run, is going to be Quick Step. As you can see, if you've played this game casually, Orph is running a lot faster than you normally would at the start of the game, and that's because of the Quick Step gems, which increase our movement speed by 25%. In addition to this, we also have 2 skills that increase it by a further 9%, for a total of 34% faster movement speed. And this saves a huge amount of time over the run, since there's going to be a lot of walking from place to place. The next gems that we're going to be running are going to be Strength Up gems, Attack Plus, and Attack Stability. These are just basic stat modifier gems. They're going to be increasing our offensive stats, so that we're going to be doing a lot more damage with everything that we do. And the last major damage increasing gem that we're going to be running is going to be First Attack Plus. This gem basically, it's 150% additive to the first action you take in combat, but it is worth noting that this additive gets consumed if we use a buff, something like Berserker or Magnum Charge, which are arts that we're going to be using very liberally towards the later part of this game. However, throughout early and mid game, it's going to be extremely important to help us get one-shots on a lot of the early game bosses. Outside of that, there's going to be a few other gems that we're going to be running. Earth Cloak is one of the major ones. It is essentially the stealth gem of this game, and it's going to allow us to skip a few unique monsters later on.
I can interject here real quick.
Oh, go ahead.
We're heading over to the fortress in order to view a very famous cutscene where apparently someone that joined the military force about 40 to 44 seconds ago crashed a mobile house into an artillery. So this is a lot of the early part of the game. It's going to be a lot of your early stuff. Just want to make note there. So another thing I should mention though, since we're getting on into a quick Fiora section, is that Fiora is level 14. Don't worry, it's totally for a skip. Totally. Alright, let's continue.
Sure. So as I was saying, Earth Cloak, the one that we're running on Shulk will decrease aggro radius by 60% for grounded enemies, and the one we have on Rhine will be decreasing aggro radius by 40% for grounded enemies. These will be useful for a couple of skips towards the mid game of the run, and they overall just make it a little bit easier to get through some areas without getting spotted.
Yeah. We have a question that just came up in chat. How different is the Definitive Edition compared to OG? We'll see throughout the run. I'll make a lot of notes between differences between the original and Definitive Edition. They tried their best to make the run as different as possible by patching out skips, but we found alternatives, so more or less it's different but the same, except for Arts Inheritance, completely different in casual mode. Right.
Yeah, Arts Inheritance is one of the big differences. The other big difference is that in the 50 Hz version on the PAL version of the Wii U, you actually walked faster because of a misconversion in the speed. That is not the case in Definitive Edition. You walk at the appropriate speed, so overall the category is a little bit slower because of that, even with Arts Inheritance. There's a few more gems to go over since we are still kind of going through early game stuff. The other important gems we're going to be running are going to be Haste, Physical Defense Down, and Weapon Power. Haste will increase our auto attack rate. This makes some fights a little bit faster, and it's going to be really helpful for the other 2 gems I mentioned. Physical Defense Down does exactly what it sounds like. It gives our auto attacks the ability to lower an enemy's physical defense by, I believe, 25% per gem. And this will essentially allow us to kill certain enemies towards the late game in fewer arts if we get lucky enough to get it. And then to improve that luck, we're running Weapon Power, which increases the chance of debuff gems being increased by 50%. So we actually do have a pretty good chance of getting those debuffs off when we need them. I think that should be all the major gems that are used throughout this run.
Yeah, and there's I guess a couple ones from like older versions of the speedrunners. Like I know that for the non-Arts Inheritance, Back Attack Plus was used for quite a bit before the Rhine route really took over, which increased damage to the back by a certain amount. Which, if we meet the Turtle Rep incentive, we will actually see that gem in use. Just that way we can ensure a one-shot on the particular boss of note. And
Yeah,
nudge, nudge.
One other gem that we will not be seeing here that is used in some of the more recent routing advancements to this category is Electric Plus, which boosts the power of electric attacks by 100%. It's useful for some arts, but most of those arts are extremely rare, and setting up arts and inheritance it's a time-consuming process, so Orph wasn't able to get all of them in time for this run for the marathon.
Yeah, because setting up arts inheritance, it's a very beefy process to do. I guess at this point, if you have any donations, you can probably take one or two right now.
Absolutely, and if you see the donation total there, you got $503 already, which means that yes, you have been donating. So the first person I want to make sure we mention here is Shawnee7188, first donation of the marathon. Good luck to all runners and organizers this week. In fact, you, other than one $5 anonymous, you were the first one to actually give a comment, so good for you, buddy. And we want to thank Avatar End for his $50 donation, as well as Wells for another $100 donation that says, let's do this thing. We've got a few more too, but I'll hold off on those. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make note about those magma lizards there. Because those magma lizards, they're very annoying because their hitboxes, they have a little bit more priority than the original, and we get pushed aside. Also, one other thing I should mention, though, we'll probably get to in Chapter 3 is that Taffer Cave is a very glitchy area that lets us do a lot of sequence breaking towards the later portion of the, or I guess, early portion of the game, which is very probably a new game, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Because we got ourselves our first real fight coming up ahead, and that's against two ancient machines. Really, a lot of the early game is just optimizing our arts, just using auto attack, and then going for backslash to ensure that we get the one shot there. And now, Colony 9 is now under attack by Mechon, so now we need to go ahead and descend down into the colony. But one glitch that was introduced in Definitive Edition is a fast vaulting. I was trying to get that there, didn't really get it. If you approach a slope at a downward angle, and you get a sudden momentum burst down, I guess you get a pretty much all your horizontal momentum gets transitioned to the vertical, so you just go plummeting really fast. Sometimes it's not useful, but that's one instance where it's really useful.
Yeah, there's going to be a few places where we want to get to save a little bit of time, and there's going to be some places where it can be really detrimental if we get a fast fall when we don't want to. Specifically in Magnum Force later on is I think the big place where we really don't want to see one.
Yeah, though I'm not going to be going for that that jump just because of how random the fast fall can get.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, so Colony 9 is currently under attack, and we'll be doing a lot of other arts that we're going to be doing. So casually, if you're playing through the game like the first time, these fights are very annoying because you're trying to inflict break, and then Ryan uses hammer down instead of wild down, and then you don't get the topple, and fights get pretty sad here. Here, we're going to be using double wind throughout all these fights because of its very wide range and its fast animation. That's been one key throughout much of the run is that we'll be using arts that have high damage and fast animation, which will let us defeat fights a lot faster than what it was. Especially compared to like No Arts Inheritance, where before No Arts Inheritance was found, the big time was like a sub 3 hour. Now we're getting to like this like 2:53s now because of Arts Inheritance, and I guess casual mode there too, but it really cut down the time a lot. So right now we're trying to get on into the military fortress because this is where the Monado is. Ignore the Monado on our back. New Game Plus is the time paradox. However, though, as we come around the bend, the area is covered off, so we're going to be trying to get the mobile artillery here that house collided into. So we got to go ahead to the district. However, though, things aren't really going to be as they seem. So I guess coming up here is going to be one of the big differences between No Arts Inheritance and Arts Inheritance. Well, first major difference is that when the Arch Shulk normally has a Stream Edge, which is a wide area effect attack, its range is relatively limited. However, though, with Arts Inheritance, we have Double Wind, which has like twice the radius or something like that.
Yeah, it's almost exactly twice the range, and it allows us to clean up all these fights a lot easier than we normally would be able to.
Yeah. I guess going on through the colony, normally enemies that are not unique will not see us. However, though, in this early portion of colony, I guess in the Econ attack, enemies, they will ignore the level difference, so they'll chase after you. We don't really have to worry about it that much. And plus with her Cloak, they're relatively blind. Yeah, so coming up here to the next fight, which is normally the tutorial fight where where Shulk gets Monado. Here we're going to be doing an interesting movement here in the battle. We're going to be sending Ryan and Dunban onto that Mechon. And moving on to the back mech as they clear that one out, so that way the first field gets lowered, and we can progress onwards to the first major boss fight of the run. I'll go ahead and let you kind of explain what's going on with that fight since it's a little technical.
Sure, so something that Orph is going to be doing here as we get into the boss fight here is that for phase 1, he's going to focus his allies on the boss and use, I believe, either Monada's Shield or Enchant just based on where he has them put. And essentially, this boss has a weird quirk where if you lower his HP to half and use a Monada art, he will immediately use his art that will finish the battle. If you don't do this, he'll attack you a couple times before ending the battle, so this saves, I believe, about 10 or 11 seconds over just doing the fight normally.
Yep. And then here we're just double winning to clean things up. There we go. So that was the end of Chapter 2. So at this point, major story stuff happened. One of the big things that happened at the end was that Fiora died. And now we're beginning our quest for revenge, climbing up the Bionis to head to Sword Valley to head over to Prison Island. I guess not Prison Island, Sword Valley. I guess at this point I can let you talk about Tephra Cave and all the fun stuff that's here in other categories.
Sure, so Tephra Cave isn't super noteworthy in New Game Plus, but in New Game categories it's a very interesting area. In the original game, whenever you were, I believe that you did it when you were first heading towards, when you were first coming to Magma Ruins, you would essentially use your party members to clip through that door to get to this area early, and you would essentially run through this area, and towards the end of the area, there was a damage boost you could do to get up a ledge to get to a late game area early. Running through this area would give you EXP from discovering those late game areas, and it could be used to get to level 50 right at the start of the run. However, both of these things were patched when they made Definitive Edition, so the route changed a little bit. And for, I guess, the first 2 days or so, we didn't really know where to get up there. But pretty soon after the game came out, there was a method to discover to also get up that way in Definitive Edition. This was essentially that whenever a character is climbing up the ledge at the top of a vine, if you swap your party leader with them and you're in a corner, you will be able to clip through certain corners. And this can be used to fall to a different area of the late game area. And then once again, you can run through and get to level 50 early. However, this clipping method was patched out in 1.1.2, which is the most recent update of the game. So if you have the most recent version of the game, you cannot do this method. And because of this, the new game leaderboard is split between the versions of the game.
Yeah, so that's mostly the all of it. There's other areas that you can use this clipping method to get some in-game equipment early too, such as in Satchel March and the High Ante Tomb. But right now, Ryan is being chased by spiders, so we're chasing after them. Yeah, at this point, I think in the new game categories, you let yourself be, I guess you went for the Vine Clip. You let yourself fall to the Arachnid Queen, head back to the arena since there's a vine right behind us. We use that to get on in. And then we're level 50 and we go back to the Arachnid Queen and just absolutely destroy it. I guess with this all done, we're now exiting the Tephra Cave and beginning our climb up to the Bionis Leg, which is absolutely beautiful if I might say so myself. And going to be starting probably one of the biggest things with the category Arts Inheritance. So how exactly are we able to set up all this Arts Inheritance? Well, normally we aren't supposed to have all these arts. Arts are kind of blocked off from between each character. However, there is a little quirk to all this shenanigans that allow us to use arts on characters we normally aren't supposed to have them on. And all of that is because of a new feature in Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. One of the things that they added besides the side story is the ability to do time attack, which is this orange thing that we are approaching right now, because there's a forced cutscene here. I'll let Arcanite explain all this because it's a complicated beast.
Sure, so casually, time attacks is just a way for you to do these very short 1 to 3 wave challenges, and as a reward for completing them, you get Napalm Stone, which can be traded for various things. Gems, various fashion equipment, unslotted gear, and whenever you get to the very end of the game, you can trade for certain collectibles. And most of these are the collectibles that are really difficult to get normally. Things like black liver beans, ice cabbages, things that don't really have easy trades for or don't have trades for them at all. So it provides a really good way for casual players to get those. However, there are a few quirks with it. There are 3 quests, I believe, that Napa and Archsage, just 3 standard quests that Napa and Archsage will sell items for, that that are the required materials for them. And whenever you complete a quest while in the Napa and Archsage's menu, the game will give precedence to the Napa and Archsage menu. So you'll be able to continue menuing, but the game knows you're supposed to complete a quest. So then whenever you're able to enter a time attack in this weird state. But the game still knows that you need to complete a quest. So whenever you load into a time attack...
Here.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the incentives that we have in this game is we got the giant monkey here, Pterodactyl Rothbard, who is famous for unfortunate players to cross their paths and then they'll go chase after players, normally one-shotting them. This is an absolute menace in casual playthroughs. However, though, one of the donations we have is that we can get our revenge on Pterodactyl Rothbard, so while we're running away from him now, if we reach the donation goal, I will stop what I'm doing. I'll go to the nearest landmark or whatever, if we're like pretty close to one. I'll travel back here, and I will destroy Pterodactyl Rothbard in a very fantastic fashion. A fashion that's, well, very revenge-worthy. So I just wanted to make note of that right now. So if you want revenge on Pterodactyl Rothbard, feel free to donate to that incentive. Otherwise, I'll let you continue.
That is only $150 to get that incentive also.
A pretty low bounty, all things considered.
Yeah. So once we're able to load into a time attack with this weird quest state, the quest completion window will pop up when we're loading into the time attack. And if you wait for about 8 seconds before closing the window, the game doesn't load you into the TA properly. It will give you the party of the restricted category if you chose one, and you'll be in the time attack arena, but you won't be in a time attack. So because of this, if you die to get out of the arena, you will now be stuck with the party, whatever the party was for the time attack, with their arts, their gear. Don't open the gear menu. If you do this, the game will crash. And their skills. So if you then enter New Game Plus with one of those parties, all party members that weren't a part of the time attack, they don't have any really data for them in their arts because they weren't a part of it. They weren't unlocked. And because of this, if you load up a character's arts list, they will have no arts on it whatsoever. It will be a completely blank arts list. And this is where the fun really begins. If you have a character without an arts list and you try to scroll down to the arts list or switch over to the level up menu, the game will essentially pull a random piece of memory and it will hand you that as if it's an art. And this can be anything from just complete garbage values to standard character arts that belong to the character to standard character arts that belong to other characters to guest party member characters, battle actions like initiate combat, lure, chain attack, or even some really interesting ones, some of which are useful for the run, like the future connected exclusive characters or the Pawn Specters. There's a lot of arts from this that are going to be really useful to the run. Orph right now has pulled up over Sword Drive. And this is the Pawn Specter Sword Drive, which is one of the strongest arts in the game. We can talk a little more about that in a second. But essentially, we can, given enough time, we can put any art we want on any character. This is very random, which means that this does take a while to set up. And it does make it a little bit difficult to implement routing changes when we discover them. But in theory, the sky is literally the limit. You can do anything you want with this, put any art on any character. And with a few exceptions, pretty much anything will work.
Yeah, so as LeGrand said, yep, it's arts gotcha. So if you like your gotcha from Xenoblade 2, Xenoblade 1 has it in a very glitchy fashion.
So I guess I can talk a little bit. I can talk a little bit about the arts that we are going to be using, as well as the how the animations work.
Yeah, I'd probably do animations first.
Okay, so the way that the game handles animations for this is that it doesn't apply the art animation to the new character. It instead applies the art's action to the character's animation. To give a better explanation of that, in the game there's a table of arts and their animation indexes. For example, for Shulk, Buster is animation index 0, and on Dunban, Gale Slash is art animation index 0. Because of this, if we put Buster on Dunban, he will use Gale Slash's animation, and the art will hit at the same time that Gale Slash would hit. However, it will have the properties of Buster in that it will have the same damage ratio, and it will apply any bonus effects such as the double damage against Mechon. There's a bunch of other there's some niche interactions with this, such as AoE arts maintain the appropriate AoE, and arts that they maintain the hit count of the animation they are using. For the most part, this won't be super relevant for this run, but it is a detail worth noting just about how the animations map to each other. And
if I can chime in just to let you know that territorial Rop Art has been met along with the super bosses. Everything just got nailed in a second. So, GG, everybody. Have fun.
All right.
It's time to go fight Rop Art.
All right, and so what exactly is the strategy we're going to be using for territorial Rop Art? Well, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. First things first, I'm going to drop things down to casual just so I can ensure the one-shot. Drop things down to casual. I guess you can go ahead and explain casual real quick.
Sure, so casual mode is essentially a way that its primary focus is making the game less brutally difficult when you're underleveled, because this game isn't really balanced well around having the player be underleveled. So the big changes that it makes are that it removes any level-based agility penalties, and one of the big ones that's going to be important here is that it will double our damage output.
So yeah, so Turtle Rop Art just casually strolling across the field as we're just right behind him. He's very far away and everything like that. You know, kind of like Xenoblade 2, how he just randomly wandering, and then Monkey sees you like halfway across the field and then punches you halfway across the field. Let's give him a taste of his own medicine. There we go. Down goes Turtle Rop Art halfway across the field. So that is the power of Activate Monada, which is a very glitchy interaction, and just for applying the sportsman-like conduct. Okay. Well, I should probably go ahead and explain to Activate Monada since that's kind of relevant there.
Sure. So the way that Activate Monada works is any art that is supposed to be in a talent slot doesn't work regularly in Arts Inheritance. Whenever you put it on a standard art slot, it will just use whatever is in your talent slot rather than actually doing what it's supposed to. In this case, Activate Monado is something that activates an aura, so it can be used at any range. And because of this, we can then use any art that we put in the talent slot at any range. In that case, we use Ponspector Sword Drive, which we'll talk a little bit more about why that art is important in a little bit. But basically, it's a very powerful physical art, and combined with all the other buffs, it allows us to do a ludicrous amount of damage from any range as long as we can target the enemy.
And if I could just chime in here just to say thank you, Wells, for that $500 donation that met every incentive for this game. Just wanted to make sure that shout-out got heard.
Woo! Yeah, thank you, Wells, for that massive donation.
Yeah, awesome, thank you.
They also asked, what's your favorite Xenoblade song?
My personal favorite song would probably be, well, I guess including like Gears and Saga, that stuff, probably Godsiv from Xenosaga Episode 3. Either that or Yggdrasil from Xenoblade 2.
For me personally, it's probably Xenoblade 2 would be Spirit Crucible Elfies, but from this game specifically, I really like Agnirtha Night. I think it has a really good ambiance to it that no other game in the series really captures for me.
I guess, speaking explicitly from this game, mine would probably be Mechonis Field. Also, I guess one thing I should probably mention though is that one of the changes that the game did to ensure that we do not do a Tefra Cave skip is that whenever you jump up in the air, it ensures that our hit rate is 100% no matter what. So because of that, yeah, even though I'm jumping, even though Mysterious Phase is not supposed to normally hit me, just because I'm jumping, the hit rate is set to 100%. Also, I forgot to change casual mode off. Oh well, casual mode is a semi-new category anyways. To continue?
Sure, so there's a couple of other things there. I guess I can kind of wrap up the rest of the Arts Inheritance stuff as far as the just general overview of it. One of the very important arts that we're going to be using is Ponspector Sword Drive, and the big reason for this is that it's supposed to be only used by the Ponspectors who have relatively low stats. So to make up for that, they gave it a very high scaling of 8.0. And this actually makes it the strongest physical art in the game, even stronger than things like Ryan's Sword Drive or Monado Buster. So because of this, it's going to allow us to get some very strong hits on non-Mechon weapons. Buster is still better for Mechons, since they take extra damage from it, but for just neutral targets, it's really good. It's just a really powerful art to spam. The other arts that we're going to be using are going to be things like we're going to be using Magnum Charge, which increases our damage of the next art by 4.8. It increases it by 4.8 times additive. Berserker, which increases our strength by 240%. Monado Buster, which, as if you've played the game casually, you know is a very powerful physical art. 7.0 scaling at max and deals extra damage to Mechon. And I believe that Shadow Eye is used a little bit, which is another art that just boosts the strength of physical arts.
We're going on into...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, probably at this point we could probably do sneak in a couple donations here, since we're going to be getting into probably one of the hardest areas of the run coming up, which includes a very scarce gift. So go ahead and get some donations out while we're at it, since looks like we had a few donations come in too.
Absolutely, yeah, there were a few, and definitely wanted to make sure we got some of these in, because some of these came in even before the marathon started. And the first one I see here comes from Dshmoo619. It says, "Why wait for the actual runs when we can donate to a good cause during this wonderful pre-taped content?" It was very, very good. Donating towards the Lost Odyssey, an underrated gem, and I completely agree with that. Second, we have it from Kurlan, who says, "Gotta start the palindromes early." And we have had various anonymous donations, $20 here, $100 here, but also from BD Jeffy P. Oh yeah, it's rain time. I'm really feeling it. Born in a world of strife against the odds, we choose to donate. Blossom Dance.
Thank you. We're probably getting like 3 more donations before we get to the next area.
Well, let's take a look here. Well, we are still waiting on some of these other things. I think it's important that we also mention that we have some prizes. So we have the Super Retro Trio, which is a Super Retro Trio Plus, 3-in-1 system, which has been contributed by Retrobit Gaming. They have several things. And if you have a minimum $15 donation from now until the end of Nier Automata, you will have the opportunity to win that. And also during this, through Valkyrie Profile, we have a wired controller for the Switch, which comes from KMD Gaming, and that's only a $5 minimum donation to get in. So definitely worth the $5, definitely worth the $15, especially because all of this is going towards NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness.
All right. I guess with that all done, we're going on into the Ether Mines as a little bit of a story update. Juju was decided to go back to Colony 6 since Colony 6 was destroyed by the Mechon in an attack prior to the start of the game. So Juju wanted to go back to try to liberate it on his own. You can probably understand how that will go, considering how strong the Mechon normally are. So now we're going on into underneath the colony, since Mysterious faced the Mechon that we fought at the end of the last chapter. Juju down here to Colony 6. We're going to try to go on into the Ether Mines to try to sneak our way in. However, though, things aren't quite as they seem, because Mechon are rampaging throughout this entire location.
Since we have a little bit of downtime, one thing I forgot to mention earlier is how Monado arts work on other characters. Do you want me to explain that now, or should I wait till we use Charlotte?
Yeah, we got a little bit of downtime.
Sure. So the last interesting thing about arts inheritance, at least in the context of this run, is that Monado arts behave pretty weirdly when you put them on other characters. On Shulk, they're supposed to be gated behind a menu, and you can basically build up your talent again as fast as possible, and they really don't want the Monado arts to be on cooldown whenever that happens. So to compensate for that, what they did is they just didn't give them a cooldown, but they make them drain your talent art so you can't access them again. However, when you put them on other characters, they're no longer gated behind talent art, and this goes for most arts that you move to other characters that have conditions. For example, Magnum Charge on other characters has no restrictions, Mind Blast on other characters doesn't have any restrictions, things like that. But in the case of Monado arts, it will drain your talent art by the amount that it's supposed to, and it will just use whatever's in your animation, the correct animation index, and it will have no cooldown. So that makes these very powerful arts extremely spammable in Arts Inheritance, and that's going to be our main source of damage for late game, just simply because being able to throw out really strong arts is really good. And it's a little bit of a... Actually, I'll let you, if you want to talk about that.
I'll let you talk about Ethermine since we're in a very scary location. Also, my rumble got turned off.
Yeah, so here we're in Ethermine. This is a very big vertical area, and because it's an open vertical area, that means that there is platforming we can do. The first jump that we're going to be doing here, Orpheus should be taking a safety save here.
Yep, I am.
And this is probably one of the hardest jumps in the run. We're aiming for this little lamppost here.
Hey, we got it.
And he gets it nice. So that is a very difficult jump. It's definitely probably the biggest run killer of early game whenever you're trying to get a good time in this category. In the original game, you could land on the cylinders, like you can see right here up on the side, and it's a little bit easier to land, though the platform cycle is a lot stricter in the original. In this game, we do a save load just simply because we can't make the cycle, and it saves a little bit of time. But in the original game, you would just make the cycle, and because of that, the movement was a lot tighter and a lot scarier.
Yeah. I guess you might notice that I'm doing a lot of save loading here across the Ether Mines. That's because there's a lot of cycle space here. This is pretty much every speedrunner's favorite location. Cycles to make, run-ending tricks, tricky platforming, all that stuff. And auto-scrollers too. Yeah, so we're doing another save load here in order to meet the cycle on the lower level. I guess speaking about the lower level, I'll probably let you explain the 50 Hz and the other caveat it has.
Yeah, so as I mentioned a bit earlier, in the 50 Hz version, you actually walked faster, just simply because of the way they converted speeds. And this had some side effects here on the blades down below, where on the 50 Hz version, because you just simply moved so fast with Quickstep, you could actually just clip straight through these little barriers that you can see up ahead on the blades, and that would let you skip a fight and a cycle, which would save, I think you said before, about 15 seconds. I'm not sure exactly how much
credit
I owed you.
So.
Yeah,
I think that's how long a blade cycle is.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with some of the timings on this kind of stuff, but it would save a pretty decent amount of time in every category because you can just run straight through these walls. However, we cannot do that on Definitive Edition, so we have to fight the enemies like we're supposed to.
At least we could do some interesting stuff about this. I guess with the fights coming up. I'm trying to think here because the 50 Hz thing, that was like it was just for PAL because PAL is at 50 Hz. So you can't really do that on like the pulling out the Wii in the North American version. Because it has to be like 50 Hz in order to clip through. I guess at this time, since we're doing a little bit of scrolling, if there's any donations, now's a good time for like one or two.
Absolutely. Well, what I'll do is I'll just mention the fact that once again, we of course want to make sure we get the hashtags out there for Questing for Glory and as well as for NAMI. That's QFG Hope HH2. That's our hashtag, and Together for MH. Those are the two because we're here supporting NAMI, and they're the largest grassroots mental health organization in the country whose work is focused around one of the three different pillars: education and support, awareness, and advocacy. And if we focus on advocacy, they engage in federal advocacy and support state organizations at the state level for advocacy efforts. Lots of different good stuff going on there.
Alright. That last battle we just did, since that was the first battle, we used the Shadow Eye since first attack only affects the first attack only to like the first enemy. We cannot ensure the one shot on both of them, so in order to get the one shot on both of them, we use the Shadow Eye followed by a Lyric to ensure that we have enough damage to one shot them both.
Yeah, and something else that's worth mentioning, and I'll also make mention of it now because it'll be relevant later in the run, is that we were behind the enemies there, and that is because in this game, if you hit an enemy that has not yet noticed you from behind, you get a plus 100% damage additive, and that also helped. We would have done it there regardless because it's just a better line to where we need to go, but it does also help us kill the enemies in a single shot, and it will be useful for a couple of other fights later in the run.
Alright, and so here's Zord 1, which is famous for being a very annoying fight because all your arts will only do 1 damage to him. So you have to build up talent for him, like the ads that come in from the side, and then have to go for the topple to try to take him down to his environment. However, though, because the double wins very wide range, we just snipe him from very far away, and then he can go ahead and exit out and climb up the elevator once again.
Yeah, so essentially now Zora fell into the Ether River. We got Juju and Atharan back. So now we're just kind of working our way out of the Ether Mine. there's a freight elevator that's one blade cycle away that we're going to be taking up, and then we'll be able to move on and continue climbing the Bionis.
So we're almost done here. Trying to think. Oh yeah. Recently, I believe Xenoblade said that there was a recent save load done like in this general area. I don't know exactly where they said it was. But yeah, there's one more save load cycle that they can do here in order to offset the next cycle. It's not the end of the world because it's not like too bad of a wait. I guess one other thing I should mention though is that I'm going to be deliberately avoiding the item orbs. That's because there's a mechanic in this game where if you don't have enough of a certain item orb, such as love cranes here in the Ether Mines, if we do not have enough of those in order to complete like a side quest and we get one of those, it'll give us a vision saying that we need this many in order to complete the side quest coming out. So we avoid that in order to avoid the mission, which is a 6-second time loss. You can mitigate it by having every single of the item orbs beforehand. You already have all the materials and you will not get the vision for the item. Yep, so coming up here is going to be Zora 2, which is going to be our last fight against him. He's now a weak to Mechon, or I guess weak to the Monado now. But there's also a little fun thing about this fight, is that we can move before the cutscene even starts, so we can just one-shot Zora there, walk up to him while the cutscene's still loading.
If for some reason that's the only fight that you can move during the fade-in, and if you're really fast, you can also get an art off before the fade-in even finishes, though that's very difficult to do and it doesn't save a ton of time.
Alright, so this here is the fight against a bunch of Mechon here. There are only unfinished battle plays during that cutscene. However, though, that unfinished battle is tied. The song that plays for it is tied to the cutscene, and it transitions into the field. Since we skip the cutscene, we do not get that awesome song, sadly. So we're stuck with the regular fight theme there. So that's going to be one instance of a thing that's going to be a theme throughout the run, is that it's not the single boss fights that are terrible, it's the multi-enemy boss fights that are going to be the rough ones that we have to strategize for.
And I guess as a bit of a story update, Metalface came back after we scared him off in Colony 9, and he had a bunch of, I believe that in this cutscene he has a bunch of the Zord-type Mechon with him as well, so there was a bunch of face Mechon. They ended up getting chased away by Telethia, and I believe here Shulk also gets his vision that tells us that we need to go to the head of the Bionis. So our quest has changed a little bit here now, because we now are no longer going to Sword Valley. We're on our way to Prison Island so that we can gain the ability to damage face Mechon normally.
Ah, great, it's foggy. And wander through the fog. And be spotted by a unique monster.
So yeah, you really don't want to get fog here because it spawns a high-level unique monster that's right in the path we want to go. And arguably more importantly, it just makes it so you really can't see where you're going, which makes it really difficult to get good lines through the area.
Yeah, normally I would change the time to make sure that we don't get the fog, but I'll just tank it through. It's not really too bad, and plus I've practiced enough where I just know my general landmarks with the mini-map up to the top. I guess we can go ahead and talk about the history of Sackville Marsh, since it's actually really interesting for speedrunning.
Yeah, so Satora Marsh in particular is an area that has gotten quite a few reroutes throughout the game's existence. In my time running alone, I think it's gotten about 3 reroutes, and I know that Orph has mentioned that it's gotten a few even before then. And the reason for this is that, in general, with this game, the story flags are pretty rigid. You have to do things in the order that they intended, because items just simply won't exist if you go there beforehand. However, Satora Marsh is one of the few exceptions, where there are 4 radiants we need to collect, and we need to get to the end of the area. But the radiants spawn right away whenever you enter the area. And because of this, we're able to just simply run... There's a lot of routing and creativity that can go into that, as far as which paths through the area are faster, which order of getting the radiants is the fastest, how can we cut corners sooner, how can we use skip travel in creative ways. And I believe a few weeks before this marathon, Tyler, who is a very prominent runner of this game and a few of the other Xenoblade games, recently found a about 5-second time save in Satora Marsh from just going to a landmark early and coming back to it later.
Also, you might have noticed me jumping through the water there. Well, it might seem like it was silly. It's actually a little bit of a time save because it saves like a few frames by jumping through the water, since jumping through the water kind of treats like you're jumping through land compared to just wading through the water, which is pretty slow, so it's a little bit faster to jump through that water there. And there's going to be another instance where we're going to be jumping up a waterfall, so we're taking a slight detour from the route in order to head over here to Baron Moor to head up to this landmark, which we'll skip travel to in a little bit. So yeah, so the troubling part right now is that along the pathway, in order to get a good line heading on to the next fight, there's a veteran Yalzo here that only spawns here during the fog, which is pretty rare. And honestly, they're not supposed to be over on this side. They're supposed to be on the other side of the river. I guess if you're doing any bingos, that's never happened before to me. I'm spawning over here. Alright then. But yeah, it's relatively a nice location to go through. Now we're going to be beginning actually getting all the radiance here. I guess you could say that is a fog beast.
The first radiant that we're going to be coming up on here is guarded by a unique monster. And depending on how he spawns, we may have to fight him. But hopefully he just won't be looking at it, and with our Earth Cloak, we'll be able to pretty easily snag it out from under him.
Yeah. And the unique monster is aggressive Cornelius. Otherwise, it's going to be a pretty easy one-shot regardless because of Inspector Sword Drive. Looks like he's kind of facing towards us.
I guess it's also worth mentioning that even though most enemies will not fight you when you're overleveled, unique monsters are the exception to this. Unique monsters and bosses will always aggro onto you if they notice you, regardless of the level difference. So that's the reason why Earth Cloak is important for this run, is unique monsters will still want to fight us, and it can be really annoying in some areas.
Yeah. However, though, because of Earth Cloak, you don't really have to worry about it too much. So we travel back here to the swamp in order to get this next radiant here from the underneath the Brog. Thankfully, that Brog is too low level and not a unique monster for us to worry about it. Now I guess we're gonna be jumping up the waterfall for quite a long time. Normally I would go through this with Shulk, but I guess for the sake of the means and for the marathon, use that for a little alley-oop.
Yeah, and also just as a quick comment, while we're alley-ooping up the river here, I believe that there was an old route that had us walk up through the Gogol-infested territory above, but it ended up being faster that just jumping up the river, it saves time compared to taking a little bit of a detour for the faster walking speed.
And they told Ryan not to jump, and yet here we are, jumping up the waterfall. Yeah, so we're getting closer to the end. We're going to be taking a little bit of a sidetrack since normally you go up here to the top and you get a side quest telling you to collect the 4 radiants in order to ascend the staircase here. Alley-oop. I wonder how many alley-oops we actually got in this section here. So instead of going there, we're going to be actually making a pretty big detour over this side here because we're going to be heading on into the cave to get the last 2. Well, it seems like we're going out of our way purposely to avoid the landmark. The landmark here is absolutely massive, so because of that, we get the landmark right here. Don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and speaking of other areas that have had reroutes since I've been running the game, is that for a while I believe that people would actually run up to the statue there and get the cutscene early, so that you could get more time running rather than jumping into the water. But once again, just jumping with a more direct path ended up being faster.
Alright, alley-oops are done since it's faster just to wade through this water now instead of jumping, since the current is actually with you with this part, so that's a good thankfulness. This is the content you needed. Yep. All the fun alley-oops. Yeah, so we're going over here to get our last 2 radiants. We're taking a little bit of a different path to get the last 2, just that way we can pick the last 2 up right in a row, and we can go ahead and head on to the boss fight here. Yeah, so I will say that weather is not too huge of a factor. There's really a little bit in the early game, but for the most part, it's not too bad.
I think we're past everything that matters for the rest of the game for weather. No rocket jump there, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I can talk about that real quick.
I thought that getting a slight jump to the side would be enough to get it. I guess it's still a little bit random, and I just got lucky on those 2 times I got it. It's something to look more into, because sometimes you just get a huge surge of momentum. You just go fly off into the first peninsula. It's quite a bit of time there since you get a huge surge of momentum, but I guess right there or not. We got ourselves the last of the 4 radiants.
Yeah, now we can just skip travel back here. Juju's going to head back with, I believe, Athon back to Colony 6, and we're going to continue our way up the Bionis.
At this point, Colony 6 is available to be reconstructed, and I guess one fun thing about New Game Plus is that if you have all the parts you have for Colony 6, you can go on ahead and actually rebuild Colony 6 completely up. You can build everything up to level 5, up to maximum at this point on New Game Plus. However, though, the dragon will not spawn until endgame. There's like level 99 optional enemy you can do. Yeah, so here is Ethereal Guardian. Here, we're going for the one-shot and trying to adjust our angle so that way the camera will kind of panic here. We just boot the Ansel there. That y'all forgot about that fight, because honestly, I forget about that fight too. Yeah, how the camera kind of pans. How the camera kind of returns there. It returns to your original camera angle. If you just fight the bird while looking up, the camera kind of freaks out and you get a little disorientated. Now we're beginning the climb up here to the top of Satchel Marsh. We're taking a little bit of corner cuts, but the main thing that we're going to be doing is that we're going to be jumping up the vines in order to cut out some animation from us climbing, because it's kind of slow. So killing with enchant animation looks kind of weird. Yeah, it kind of does, but welcome to Art's Inheritance. Nothing makes sense. It's really not going to make sense once you get to the halfway point of the run. Wink. I guess with this all done, we probably have some time for donations, since there's not really too much to the climb.
Well, the donation tracker, you picked the right time. We just had an anonymous $500 donation come in. Thank you so much. Ooh. And not to underscore that, but we have a $50 donation from Minimoo Half and Half, who says, "I'm a bear." We actually have, if I could just take a couple seconds here to remind everybody that coming up in a couple runs, we have a bid war going on for Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. We can choose the Majin color, we can name the character, and you can choose the voice language. All of those are bid wars, so make sure you get donations in. We want to make sure that all of those are just battling it out to see who wins what.
All right, then. So I guess with this all done, we're now entering the very end of Arch. So I guess one thing that you can do here is that we got ourselves a statue summit there. We can switch over to a character with Vine Clip, and there's a Haunted Tomb right underneath us, so we can enter and get like Days Resist, like a Grace Helm, I think, and maybe like Sleep Resist or Days. I think it's Days Plus and a Sleep Resist too. Something along those lines.
Yeah, that would be used in the older versions of the oldest game versions of the new game categories, just simply because that gear will be way better defensively and just in terms of the gems it has than anything you can really get at this point in the game normally.
However, though, for the sake of speedruns, it's not the most useful because Days Plus isn't really too helpful.
Kartus says it's a debuff for this gem.
Okay. So the
so that would be very useful.
Yeah, the debuff is in High Entia Tomb.
Okay.
That also, I think, has a agility up gem too. So we're doing another save load there in order to reset the cycle up here for the guys, which will take us to the upper portions of the Bionis. Also, you can see that there's a gigantic map there. Don't worry about it; just leftover data. Alright, and I guess with that all done, we're now going to be beginning Magnum Forest, which is a pretty big area of the run, and also we get introduced to two party members that will be not really using too much in the run. Pretty much the main ones we are using is the ones that are in our party right now. I guess at this time, I know you already went through some of the parts that we use. I guess you can kind of over them a little bit more.
Sure. So I mentioned before that I guess something that could be useful to talk about is which characters we use for what, because that actually is something that's going to be relevant as we start getting a little bit later on. As we get into late game, Charlotte is actually going to become the main carry of the run, just simply because she has fast animations and good enough stats. With her, we're mainly going to be using a combination of Magnum Charge, Berserker, and Buster to deal high amounts of damage to literally everything. Shulk's time is probably going to be wrapping up here in a few areas, just simply because he's pretty trapped to using long Renato animations. He's a very good character, but unfortunately just can't really make use of what makes things great with Art's Inheritance. Dunban isn't really used much. He's used mostly for Peerless support, which is a very powerful aura that gives all nearby party members 155% strength buff, as well as for inflicting physical defense down. And Ryan will be used a little bit later to snipe some enemies from far away with Ponspector's Sword Drive.
As you kind of already saw with Territorial Rock Art.
Yeah, and I guess something else that could be topical right now is I can talk a little about the fact that there's actually multiple routes for this game now in this category.
Yeah, the route I'm using is kind of an older one that's before Mind Blast was really used on Shulk, since Mind Blast is a very powerful art on Shulk. It has like high damage, high ether, with like Electric +2, I do believe, and just really good on Shulk. However, though, that art is super, hyper, ultra, nebula, EX plus rare, compared to like other arts which aren't really quite as rare, but still very rare. So, welcome to Art Scotch, where you spend 30 hours trying to pull one art.
Yeah, what Orph is doing here is what we call the Charlotte route, which is essentially, he's running a little bit of an older version of it, just simply because setup takes a long time. But I think the Mind Blast strats only save about 5 or so seconds, so we're not losing a ton of time there. But more recently, there's been a few new developments. Whenever I run this category, I actually run a completely different route that uses Ricky as the main carry, which uses Final Cross as a powerful AoE ether art, and the main reason for the existence of that route is that Charla, while she's incredibly good, Orph mentioned this earlier, we can really struggle with a lot of the fights that have large groups of enemies in it. And Ricky, with Final Cross and its large AoE, has a lot better time with those. However, he lacks the ability to really muscle through some of the higher HP bosses the way Charla does, so the time kind of evens out between the two, and they end up being about the same speed.
Alright, so we're doing a little bit of a slight route. I said I wouldn't do it, but I just kind of want to showcase it off, since it's a pretty big thing that we're doing. This was discovered not too long ago. I know that I kind of found this routing here. We're taking a particular fault to try to mitigate our swimming time, since swimming is kind of pretty slow.
Especially here where we're swimming against the current.
Yeah. It's a bit of a reckless one. I said I wasn't going to be doing it, but muscle memory kind of took over. So here, this fight is a very annoying fight, because with the power of Mind Blast, this fight's relatively free. However, though, we have to do a particular step to make sure that we get the one-shot. So now we're doing another menu to equip our characters with the stuff we need. One thing that I kind of forgot to mention is that we're giving everyone Mactus stuff for the early part, just because the Mactus stuff is going to be pretty useful for I guess fighting mech on enemies, because despite everyone having Buster just gives a ×2 damage multiplier, and the damage to Mechon depends on the weapon itself. So anti-Mechonry will be able to hit Mechon, otherwise it'll just do 1 damage, or I guess technically 2. So generally we want to have everyone with Mechon stuff until we're done with the Mechon very late in the round.
Yeah, and if we did not equip anti-Mechon weapon, we would basically have to use enchant for every fight, so it's definitely worth the slightly weaker weapons to save an art animation on literally every fight that has Mechon in it.
Yeah, so just taking some plans here through the portion. Normally we would try to avoid that water patch, however, though, because of jumping speed being very powerful, we can just jump on through the water and not really have to worry about it too much. So now we're heading on into Frontier Village, which has everyone's favorite character, Hereupon Ricky. However, though, one thing I should mention, though, is that when you're setting up Art's Inheritance, when you do that, the 3 characters that are used in that time attack, for this one we use Lost in a Dark Dream, which is from completing Future Connected. You unlock that one. Inside of that one, you're locked into using 7, Melia, and Ricky. When we set up Art's Inheritance, those 3 characters, they'll have their arts loaded, so when we start pulling arts for Arts Gotcha, they cannot pull any arts because they already have them loaded, so those 3 characters are unable to partake in Art's Inheritance. So because of this, even though the Ricky route sounds very appetizing, I cannot do it because Ricky already has his arts preloaded before I could even start pulling art. So that's why the routes are very much differently, because the 3 characters you have to sacrifice very greatly. Like, I think with the like one of the routes you can't access Charla, which is also a big bummer too.
Yeah, that's the thing about the Ricky route, is that you actually completely lose access to Charlotte for Art's Inheritance, because the time attack we have to do, uniquely disadvantaged, uses her. So we just simply cannot make the 2 routes work together. They have to be 2 separate routes, which is a bit unfortunate, but it is what it is, and it kind of means it's kind of good for the sake of the speed run because it means that those incredibly rare arts aren't as important as they could be, so it saves time on setup.
Yeah, Final Cross sounds as rare as it would be, considering that it's an I think X-Buster that Cosmos used from Xenosaga. Yeah, so we're now heading through throughout the Frontier Village right now. We're taking a little bit of a slight detour since our goal is just head up to the top, so taking a nice little diversion outside, take a look at the beautiful view, and it also saves a few seconds compared to going through it on the interior. I guess coming up here, we're going to be making a little bit of a sidetrack to get a use residence. That way, when we have to come back here up again, we can just get most of the climb. I guess you can go ahead and talk about the amazing costumes that you can get for doing a pack.
So I believe that Orpheolus is one of them, one of the better ones in my opinion. Whenever you do time attacks, there are special fashion equipment that you can only get through it, and of those includes the ever popular Pineapple Ricky. So Ricky won't be used much in this run. He'll run aside us for a little bit, but for that time where he will be dressed up as a pineapple. But there's a couple of other things, such as some legacy armor, which I believe is the same fashion that it was in the original version, though it was changed for the equipment that was changed when they brought it over, as well as resorts, essentially a resort beachwear for all characters, which some of those are actually really nice, and just, yeah, they're really fun outfits that some people really enjoy using just simply because some of them are silly, some of them are genuinely really cool.
Yeah, for this one, I'm kind of going with the silly outlook for Shulk, since it's kind of like an old meme where all of Shulk's limbs are replaced by Monados. Here, Shulk's limbs are replaced by Monado 3s. You can kind of see it there, kind of like that. A little bit hard to see in the dark, so I guess you can kind of discuss the reroutes done in here in Magna.
Sure, so for a long time, we would go up through the Yellow Flower Grove as we travel through Magna, essentially just cutting across through the upper part of the second half of Magna. However, Orph did some timing a couple months ago at this point, and found that it's about a second faster to take a detour to the lower part of this area, and this will have us walking past a couple of these level 98 Dinosaurus enemies. And because they're so high level, they will actually be able to see us. But luckily for us, because they are a high-level enemy in an early area, they naturally don't have a huge vision because they don't want the game designers didn't want you to get sniped by them on your first visit. And then that combined with the Earth Cloak makes it pretty hard for them to see us. That being said, there's going to be one up here that we have to walk directly next to, and if it's facing the wrong way, it can see us and slow us down by at least a little bit.
Alright, looks like Mr. Dino is going to behave for the most part. If he sees us, it's not too bad. I think he turned to us and just completely ignored us. I wonder if we're actually going to see the Dinosaurus glitch that we had a couple games ago. A couple practice runs ago, we had a random these Infernal Dinos just book it across the screen. It was actually kind of hilarious. So we don't get it this time. Oh well. So now we get ourselves a Nail and Telethi. I guess you can explain the downsides about using casual mode.
Sure, so probably the biggest downside of casual mode is that I mentioned earlier that it removes agility penalties, and this also applies to you. So if you outlevels an enemy, normally you get a plus 200 agility, and if the enemy outlevels you by a lot, they'll get a plus 200 agility. And in the case of Telethia, they will use Soul Read, which will give them effectively plus 200 evasion, and on casual mode, that will actually make it where you can't hit them even if you're over-leveled. This isn't really relevant in the speedrun, though if you don't get quick kills on some of the fights towards the very end of the game, you can lose quite a bit of time due to just not being able to hit enemies.
But thankfully, those fights are pretty quick and mostly consistent too, so it's not too hard to miss the timing. So with this all done, we are now done here in Magna, so it's now time for us to go on into Earthsea and continuing the story on there, so I guess we can have a little bit of a lull in the story, so if there's any donations, now is a pretty good time to do it before we get to the next big story beat.
Sure, I've only got one to read here right now, and I know there's some more coming in, but it says it's from Kirilos, who says, thanks to all the runners working hard to help with mental illness. Also, Ricky Pineapple Hype. I love crazy things like that. But I should also mention that we are raising money for NAMI. Of course, you are here to help with that, and you'll see at the bottom, the ticker there's a couple things. First is a challenge incentive for Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age, to fight the Mega Boss, Yasmat, and also to race Rickon. Both of those are very close to being finished, and I would love to be able to be the guy to announce that we are going to be doing that. So let's get those donations in, guys.
Yeah, the Yasmat one sounds very interesting considering the fact that guy has like 50 million health, something ridiculous like that.
You got it. 50 million, if I remember right.
Yeah, so seeing that enemy taken down in just a few minutes, that'll definitely be something to see. So coming on here to Eritsea. Eritsea is a huge map. It's probably the largest map of the game. However, though, most of the area is just empty water, and we'll be doing a little bit of an expeditive process because here in the sea there's it's divided up into like 10 hovering reefs and a few other ones. So we don't really go too far out of our way throughout them. We don't do much swimming, which is grateful. So if you're going for 100%, this area is an absolute nightmare because there's some areas such as the head of the Bionis you can swim to, which counts as a location for completing the area, so yeah. I guess one thing before we go on is that we're going to be doing a little bit of a detour. We're going to be picking up the next landmark before heading out, before backtracking a little bit. That's because the landmark here for the central gate is relatively huge and it puts us very far away. So when we have to go out and explore Eritsea some more, we can just skip travel away and not have to worry about the long backtrack to this teleporter here. We just teleport around and we head to the Lighthouse. So is there anything you want to add, Arcanite?
So one of the things I personally like to make a comment of for things like this is that one thing that I personally feel like goes really underappreciated in this game, and I'm sure with many RPG runs, is that the movement is a lot more difficult to get perfectly optimal than it looks like. And I personally find Eritsea one of the areas that I personally struggle with a lot on my paths through it. So just, I want to give a bit of a kudos to Orph and pretty much the other people that are way better at the movement in this game than me, that just for taking the time to really figure it out and really understand how to get through these areas optimally and all of that good stuff.
And though I'm still not 100% great on movement, it's mostly my menus that I'm really bad at. So yeah, we're heading over to Lighthouse. It's a really cool lighthouse to say the least, and there's actually quite a few side quests throughout the game that you can do. One of them involves fixing up the lighthouse, which is like a 3-quest chain where Melia gets an optional skill. Since every character, they have 3 required skills. I guess 3 skills they start out with, and 2 more they unlock along the as you progress through the game. There we got the lighthouse. We're now good to do some story content too. I guess heading on into the portions of Alchemoth, you're going to notice that Melia is going to be level 97. Unlike Xenoblade 2, where 97 is a very important level for New Game Plus, here are a couple reasons. First, I'm too lazy to get up to level 99. 2, 97 might as well be 99 for the sake of the 2 fights that Melia is used for. Also, can I actually skip these cutscenes? And lastly, Melia has a slower growth rate because Melia does not have any experience boosting skills unlike Ricky and 7, which they do have experience boosting ones, so they get up to level 99, meanwhile Melia doesn't, but Melia's not really used too much in the run anyways. I guess go ahead and do a story update since quite a lot of stuff has happened in that last cutscene.
So, in terms of what has happened in the story, essentially the High Entia and the Monado don't have a good history with each other. And because of this, whenever they saw Shulk with the Monado, they basically just immediately arrested us. Meanwhile, Melia is returning to the capital as she is I guess it hasn't really been revealed yet, but she is the princess of the High Entia. And essentially, the people of the High Entia aren't the biggest fan of Melia because she is half Homs. Pineapple Ricky. A lot of the people aren't the biggest fan of Melia because she's half Homs and half High Entia. So in order to prove her worthiness to the throne, she's going to have to brave the High Antia Tomb in a little bit, that'll be the area we get to after this. But for right now, we have some filler stuff where we have to go and save the Lighthouse worker.
I completely forgot the reason why we have to save the Lighthouse worker. I skipped the cutscenes a little too often, so I kind of forgot some of these story beats. This one I never actually really got. I'd skip traveling back here to had a little bit of time. Yeah, I guess. Trying to think. I guess at this point in the game, there's not really too much going on. Otherwise, RC is a very open map to say the least. It's actually really interesting for 100% because there's a lot of cool areas that you can actually go to. One of the areas is that there's a unique monster here on Hovering Reef 5, Flabbergasted Jerome, I do believe. That's located down here in the bottom here. Also, one thing I'll mention, thunderstorms are a little scary here in RC because we got level 85 Nebula here. You don't have to worry about them, but they are a thing that exists here that are a little bit annoying to deal with if you're playing through casually. Now heading on here to Hovering Reef 6, there's not too much left for me heading on into the boss fight coming up here against 5 Ignia. Again, one of those boss fights that's really helpful if you have Mind Blast. However, though, this route's a little bit archaic, so we're doing things the old-fashioned way. The old-fashioned way, I mean luring everyone to us, and then luring the guard, Shadow Eye, Lariat, and then all that fun stuff. So we go here, Shadow Eye, Lariat. There we go. You know, the fight,
nice.
Sometimes the fight goes a little rough, but it's going alright.
Don't want to interrupt you guys, but I have a question that's coming in here from Discord, and it's what your runner incentives would be. So if somebody comes in and donates for for the runner's choice or the commentator's choice, do you have anything that you would like to see met as far as any incentives go or any bid wars?
For me, it's definitely the use mat one because that's one I'm very interested in.
Nice.
I think it'll be the same for me because that sounds pretty interesting, and I'm starting to get into the Ys series, so I would love to see someone absolutely destroy them.
Alright then. So now we are going to be taking a nice little rest here. Gunband's going to try to order room service, but it never comes. Instead, we have to deal with some high NT assassin. This fight casually can be a little bit rough because at this point in the game, Shul can only do 1 damage to the high NT, so it's a little bit annoying to do so, but we're just going to back things up and use Larry to try to take most of them out. We're using our area of effect arts very cautiously because Eric and I can probably explain a little bit better.
Yes. Sorry, what did you say? Sorry,
about the area of effect attacks.
Yeah, so a lot of the arts that we're going to be using for area effect are Lariat and Double Wind. They essentially have fan-shaped hitboxes in front of us, so if we're very close to an enemy, we won't have a very wide spread. But if we're too far away, then it won't reach. As you can see there, Lariat didn't hit the far back high Entia, because I believe it only has a 10-meter range. There's a couple of other arts that we're going to be using. The big art we're going to be using late game, Buster, has a line AoE. It's a 10-meter in a straight line. And that we'll try and set up a couple of collaterals with that later on. But overall, a lot of optimizations in fights in this game is essentially trying to get good AoE lineups for those multi-enemy fights, because you can lose a lot of time whenever they don't go well.
And plus, when you activate an area of effect attack, if an enemy is dying, that enemy is still considered there, so the area of effect attack will still go off.
I actually forgot about that. But yeah, that's if there's an enemy that is still in the process of dying, the game essentially. I think that's something they changed in Definitive Edition. You can use an area effect if any enemy is within your range, not necessarily the enemy you're targeting. And dying enemies still count as being enemies, so you can get stuck on them because of that.
Yeah. I guess you kind of notice there is that Melia is going through the High Entia tomb right now. The main story thing is that she's going to be proving her worth through the High Entia ancestors to prove that she's worthy of becoming the next heir to the High Entia. Along the pathway, there's 2 fights we use, and there's 2 arts that Melia is going to be using throughout the run. The first one is Summon Bolt for the first fight, and the second fight we're going to be doing a little bit something different. We're going to be using Summon Ice, discharging because it has a high area of effect attack, and then putting your weapon away as the damage over time is going to chip them away. By the time they're both gone, the barrier will go down, and we're free to go on. That fight's a little RNG since sometimes the ice damage over time doesn't go down instantly.
Yeah, I think that one of the enemies survived with the tiniest sliver of health there.
Yeah.
I know that different runners have different setups for that, but I think that it always has, pretty much no matter what you have, it has a very tiny chance to survive, so that was a little bit unlucky.
Yeah. And again, marathon luck. So now we're going on through the tomb now because, lower portion of the tomb, because Ryan decided to press free button. Instead of taking the shortcut way, we now have to take the long way through the tomb. And because Melee has a lot of convenient shortcuts, we have to climb across a gigantic well of sorts, so I don't know if there's any donations at this time since this is a pretty long wall climb.
There is one that's been waiting to be read here for a while, and I want to make sure I get this right because it's a shout out to you, my speedrunning friend Orf, for being in the opening event of a big event like this. Within the time to get this donation going, you've already made it further than I ever made it playing the game. So you're definitely doing something right. The runner's choice for the incentive. Also, let's go, Hereupon Ricky. I have to make sure we clarify this right, though. You had, we've got Yeast the game coming up, and we've got Yeast Matt, the boss, coming up for Final Fantasy XII. Which one was your donation or incentive for?
For Yeast Matt, the Final Fantasy XII Super Boss.
Gotcha. And the commentator is for Yeast, right?
Yeah.
Got it. Now we're clear.
All right, then. Thank you so much, everyone, for your donations. It's been a spectacular event already, raising over $1,600. It's definitely been fun doing this marathon run. Yeah, so we're heading on through the rest of the High-Ended Tomb. Earlier in the run, I mentioned that there was a couple of wall climbs you can do to get some endgame equipment. The other one, not available right now, but once we have Melia back in the party, there's the optional High-Ended Tomb. I don't think it's available on the minimap right now, which lets us get to the other Imperial Treasury, which normally unlocks if you have completed a very long chain of a side quest that involves going across much of Bionis, getting some certain items, fighting level 88 enemies, something like that. In order to get an item in order to actually access that tomb. Thanks to wall clipping and deliberately switching between two characters to maintain your wall clip capabilities, you can clip through that wall and get those items very early. Also, that was very glitchy. The walls, they don't like being climbed on. Yeah, so we're approaching the very end of the tomb now. Actually, I want to try to avoid this Xenomorph since this Xenomorph loves being a vision. Okay, tasty sausage. I'm sure Tora would really love that. Yeah, so some of the items here that's for visions, they're very common and we prefer not to get in a vision of them, but yeah. Now we're pretty much done here with the High-Ended Tomb. Just press this button here. And go on ahead and head on to the right up ahead. I'll go ahead and let you explain what's going on here because it's a doozy. Casually, at least.
Yeah, so casually this fight can be pretty bad because you need Shulk, or I believe Melee at this point, in the party to be able to deal with the Teletia's Soul Read. However, Shulk only does 1 damage per hit to Tyrera, so it's a bit of a double-edged sword, or it's a bit of a lose-lose situation casually for this fight. Luckily for us, we have access to some pretty powerful arts and Magnum Charge boosted Ponspector sword drives, and we're able to get through the fight pretty quickly. Something else that's worth mentioning
got a little roll there, sadly.
The thing that I wanted to mention there is that you could see that Dunban waited a while before using Peerless. We like him to use Peerless very quickly in combat. However, sometimes his AI just doesn't really want to cooperate depending on what your setup is. And I believe that you said, Orf, that your Dunban doesn't like cooperating most of the time.
Yeah.
So we might not be getting quite as many Peerlesses as we would like, but that's just a quirk of the way that the AI in this game works and a quirk of the way the game or the characters see these arts that we've inherited onto them. It's just something we have to deal with.
Yeah, and also you kind of noticed that Ryan was kind of standing around there for a little bit.
Yeah, I can explain that. So this was something that for a long time we didn't really know why, but we're pretty sure now. Essentially, as we saw earlier when we killed Rotbart, Ryan has Ponspector Sword Drive over his talent slot. And the AI isn't really sure what's going on with this, because it knows that he has full talent, and the game gives a high priority to using Ryan's talent art. Just simply, that's just how it works. And because he can't use his talent art because it's not there, he ends up essentially just locking up his AI, and he won't do anything. He won't even auto attack. He'll just stand there for the rest of combat after he's used Ponspector Sword Drive once. So essentially, Ryan will get off a big hit right at the start of combat, but then the rest of combat after that, he's not going to really be doing anything.
Yeah. it's kind of a bummer because a lot of the time, Ryan will be standing around for like very long boss fights. So for the most part, Dumb-man's gonna be standing there trying to get PDD down, not really understanding how to use Buster, and then for the most part, it's just gonna be Melia, or I guess Charlotte doing most of the carrying. Can I please skip that cutscene? Yeah. So at this point in the game, Mechon are gonna be starting to invade RC with the Hyantia Emperor Saurian, I do believe, going ahead to Prison Island to unleash the giant to try to take out the Mechon and fulfilling destiny. Since he had a vision 1 month ago that the Emperor would go to Prison Island, and there the Emperor would die. So he doesn't really want to fulfill that, but sometimes destiny must be taken apart for the very good. Also, one thing I kind of want to mention, though, a little bit is that the tablet behind the tomb, which kind of prophesizes the history with the Hyantia and such, you can kind of make a comparison that the tablet could be a little bit of a Zohar reference, since this game is connected to like these, I guess, loosely like Xenoblade 2 and other Xeno games, where a lot of those games have like a Zohar reference here, or deliberately the Zohar. You can kind of see that a little bit there. Here, the Zohar is probably the least pronounced in the Xenoblade games, just because this was kind of like at a time before it was going to be a Xeno series, since originally this game was conceived as Minato History of the World, as like the working title before Nintendo said to change it to Xenoblade to honor the legacy of Takahashi. So yeah, so now we're making our way out of Alchemoth. At this point in this time, skip travel is disabled because the skip travel flag, or I guess the next story flag, is tied with us exiting Alchemoth, so we kind of need to take things the slow way out.
And a couple of interesting movement things to talk about real quick, because one just happened and one's coming up here. I'll talk about the one that's coming up first. When we get to the end of this conveyor belt, Orph is going to be jumping to help preserve some of the momentum. I don't know if you jump once or twice, but recently it was discovered that you can maintain a bit of your momentum into a second jump, so in some areas it is faster to go for a second jump there. And so yeah, that's the first one. And then the other one that happened a little bit ago is whenever you land right at the edge of a body of water as it slopes down, you can actually cancel your landing animation by being right on the edge of where you can start swimming. And it's really easy to set up whenever you're coming down from the Ascension Hall there. But you can do that anywhere in the game where there is a sloped surface leading down into water. Most other areas where we can do it in the run, we don't usually intentionally go for it, just simply because usually you risk dying because you're falling from such a great height. But it isn't a thing that you can do technically anywhere that there is water with a slope going down into it.
Yeah, I was trying to attempt it there in active forest back there, trying to do that quick, fall down to the lakeside area. However, though, that one is very risky because if you don't jump at the right time, you go splat. Yeah, so this island is an island I kind of like personally because of the riding decisions, because a lot of the time it's a little bit hard to see where you need to go to cut corners. I use a visual marker of that tree in the background to make sure we get there, and using like a distance between these two trees to make it to the next teleporter.
Also, something that Xenoblade mentioned in the chat is that he remembers that he was able to de-lock Ron's AI with enchant or something at one point, but overall there it's pretty inconsistent, so that's interesting to hear. I didn't actually know about that. Yeah. But I guess that could make sense, given that might mess with his AI and the priorities. So
yeah, trying to think. I guess one thing to kind of do like a little plug with the Xenoblade community is that Ars Inheritance, it's still an untouched beast. Like there's a lot of potential interactions that you can do with it, because for the most part we're just interacting with like some of the big players like Charla, Ricky, and all that stuff. But there's some potential options that we might not know about, and you can try this on your own. TJ, as a little bit of a semi-plug, TJ Blakely, he has a good guide of setting up how to do Ars Inheritance over on the YouTube side of things. We also have that pinned in the Discord server somewhere. And just the resource tabs in like the Xenoblade speedrunning on speedrun.com does have a lot of tabs also if you want to get into like just playing around with Ars Inheritance, because it's actually kind of fun getting it all. And then also a little bit addicting and time consuming getting all the arts for Ars Inheritance too. I'll go ahead and let you explain this island here.
Sure. So the first thing of note on this island is that depending on our movement, we might get spotted by a flying unique monster here. And if we didn't want to get spotted by it, we could run Aerial Cloak, which would be the same as Earth Cloak, but for aerial enemies. but it doesn't really matter for this unique monster in particular because it will de-aggro us before we get to where we need to go. The other thing of note is that we're actually going to the right Seal Island first, just simply because it saves one input in a skip travel menu, so it's ever so slightly faster. But just to expand a little bit on what Orph was saying there, if anyone's at all interested in learning about this glitch, stop by the speedrunning Discord. Me or for anyone else who knows about it would be more than happy to help you on your way. But I would like to give a warning before people, if you want to play with it on your own, that make sure you're doing it on not your main file, because it can do some stuff to your file that can't be undone, such as removing your ability to level up Monado arts.
And also just locks you out of like Monado arts and other story related arts too. So yeah, so I guess going over this way, I kind of want to make a little bit of mention of a mechanic in this game that's also a part of casual mode, is that there is a mechanic in this game called Spike, where whenever you, to a certain condition, the enemies will trigger Spike. You explained it pretty well the other day.
Sure, so there's 3 types of spikes in this game. There are proximity spikes, there are counter spikes, and there are down spikes. Proximity spikes, for the most part, these spikes are pretty self-explanatory. Proximity spikes, when you are close to an enemy, you will take damage or receive a debuff. Counter spikes, when you hit an enemy, you will take damage or receive a debuff. And down spikes, which are essentially when you topple the enemy, you will
enemy did not want to behave. It kind of blocked my pathway there. I was trying to get a drink of water.
But whenever you hit the enemy while they're toppled, you will receive either a debuff or damage. In general, proximity spikes have the weakest effects, counter spikes are in between, and down spikes will have the most powerful effects. And these are essentially just ways for the game to either, essentially, in some cases, kind of stat checking you, make sure you have the right resistances. In other cases, to make it more difficult to just simply topple lock an enemy, because in casual play, that's a very good way to essentially get out of jail free card for most enemies. And the reason why this ties into casual mode is that casual mode for damaging spikes will reduce the damage by 90%, so you're only taking 10% of the damage. And for debuff spikes, it will reduce the chance of the debuff activating by 50%. So you'll only have a 50% chance of getting applied with the debuff.
Yeah, so at this point of the game right now, we're getting ready to head on into Prison Island. We're pressing a button or to head on to Prison Island and concluding more or less the first act of the game, because a lot of very important stuff comes up here momentarily. But before we do so, we got a random boss fight here. Remember Skyray? I sure don't. The game's going to forget about it in like 3 seconds. There we go. Now, what were you going to say, Mark?
I was just going to say that once we're done with this next area, we're probably going to have a bit of a story dump. So if we'll probably have time for 1 or 2 donations right now if we have them.
Literally what I have. I've got 2 here. One from Leap Bomb, who says, "Take my Canadian money, keep those spirits high. Thank you for the $20 donation." And also from My Hero Zero for $17. Again, thank you, My Hero Zero, for donating. And everyone, I want to encourage you. We are quickly reaching that mega boss fight in Final Fantasy XII, and both of those people who made donations are now included in both of the prize incentives that we currently have open. One for the Super Retro Trio Plus 3-in-1 system. That's a $15 minimum buy-in. We want to thank Retro Bit Gaming for including that, as well as the wired controller for the Switch from Game KMD, which is only a $5 donation. You have a chance to win that.
Yeah, so kind of at this point right now, we're going on into Prison Island right now. It's a very open area, but for some reason all the teleporters are very close by. Must be nothing. It's probably had a lot of time to implement stuff in this area, and they kind of forgot about it. So it might just be a leftover thing, and yeah. I mean, how are you doing?
I want to have a really grand entrance for that holiday, because we're going up to a pretty big boss fight. They really wanted to make sure they set the mood for it correctly.
Yeah. As you probably noticed, we're taking the very literal abridged version through Prison Island right now, because there's a lot of areas you can explore, but none of the teleporters really work right now. We'll be back here much later on in the run. We have reason to explore more of the area. But for now, we got a big fight coming up here, so I'll probably let you explain a lot of the story stuff coming up here, because holy heck, there is a lot.
Yeah, so here at the start of this fight, whenever you're playing casually, at this point you would gain the ability to damage face mech on with the Monado normally, as well as this would allow you to damage the people of Bionis, such as Nopon, Homs, or Hyantia if you were to fight more of them. And essentially what happens in the cutscenes that we just skipped is Shulk and the crew come up to the top of Prison Island. There is a giant chained up there who is named Zanza, and he essentially tells Shulk, I can power up your Monado if you free me. So Melia, along with Soren, are rightfully not really thinking that Shulk should do it. He was probably chained up for a reason. But Shulk decides to do it anyways because he needs the power to get the revenge on Fiora. Or the revenge for Fiora. Well, as all this is happening, Metalface breaks through the barrier around Prison Island, kills Soyen as well as Zanza, and yeah, that's pretty much what happens there. So we are able to dispatch him, and now towards the end of that scene, when Shulk is about to kill Metalface and get his revenge, a silver-faced Mechon jumps in the way, and Shulk basically tears open its armor, and sitting inside the Mechon is Fiora. So this kind of starts the next arc of the game where we've gone from just simply seeking revenge to wanting to understand what's going on now that we have an idea that Fiora might still somehow be alive.
Yeah, so also at this point in the game, there's now an empty throne here. They're trying to get Melia to ascend the throne, however, though, a lot of stuff is also coming up here, and they're also wanting to make an allied... Yeah, Hyantia wants to create an allied force in order to, take on the, reconnaissance. It means war now, since the Hyantia, they were kind of oblivious to the original part, but here they're now taking the threat seriously, and they're going to be taking on the Mechonis along with Shulk and the gang. So now we'll be heading back to Active Forest, or to begin our descent down into the Sword Valley, and beginning a pretty long section to say the least. Also, Elvis is tagging along with us.
Yeah, Alvis is the seer of the Hyantia. That wasn't really addressed before, but essentially he also has history with the Monado and the path down Valak Mountain, which is where we're heading. So he's going to be accompanying us basically as our guide through this next area.
Yeah, so now we're here on back here in Active Forest. Now I'll just say this right now. This is where one of the big sources of RNG is in the game. Because coming along this path, we have this gigantic Silo Orluga that loves to block your pathway and prevent you from moving onward. Just like right there, he was trying to get in our way. Thankfully, we were able to sneak right past him. Otherwise, he'll just block the pathway, and you have to detour around his gigantic model, which has high priority over yours, so it's a bit of a nuisance. Now we're beginning our trek down Sword Valley, which is pretty long and frankly boring area of the game.
Yes, this is a very pretty area with very good music, but unfortunately in the terms of the speedrun, there's not really a whole lot to do. And it just kind of ends up being us walking down a slope for 10 minutes.
Yeah, so we have 10 minutes of nothing, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them in chat, because it's pretty much just walking sim time.
Well, this sounds like it would be a good idea for me to chime in and just remind everybody that we are raising money and helping to support NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And I'm not sure if you guys knew this, but did you know that NAMI operates a national hotline from Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern?
That I did not.
Ah, well, if that's the case, and if you do need help, because NAMI wants you to know that it is okay to not be okay right now. You are definitely not alone, and you need to feel okay to reach out to yourself and others. But you can also call them. It's 1-800-950-NAMI. That's 6264. You can call that number for support, information, referrals. NAMI is there. It gets it. It is there for you. And you can also visit NAMI.org for more information.
Yeah, so pretty much the main time says that we're trying to do here is trying to get some fast falls off the ledges. That way we hit the ground a little bit faster. Otherwise, not really too much coming up here except the bone tube, which, I'll be honest, I really don't like in Definitive Edition because the mechanics they changed here. So one of the things that the Definitive Edition did to make sure that we don't get into the later portions of Tefra Cave is also change how jumping works. Originally, you could jump like decently high, Here in Definitive Edition, they changed that vertical momentum more into horizontal, so now it's a lot slower of a, you don't really jump as high, you go a little bit further. That also transitions to momentum too. So because we're going to be going on to a bone tube, we're going to be gaining a lot of momentum. We're going to be going really fast, and yeah. The downside though is that because it prioritizes more of the horizontal, we go further and not more up and down, so it's a nuisance to say the least, because the geometry here in the tube did not transition to HD very well. So because of this, we're going to be
it's very
I didn't
easy.
get fastball there.
It's very easy to essentially slip off of the ice tube here and either die or just not make the jump or have any number of really annoying things happen if you're not careful.
Yeah, so we're taking some pretty precautious movement through here at the tube to make sure that we don't hit any of the numerous geometry jankiness like that area there. And also we're not jumping here because it's very easy for you to fly up into the mantle down there. Also, we didn't get the early skip travel point. If you jump just right, you can get the skip travel there really easily, but the game didn't really want to behave there today. Yeah, so one thing I like to complain a lot about this game is that they're more than willing to patch out vine clipping, which like 0.1% of the player base will actually attempt. Meanwhile, they're not really wanting to patch out the very jank tube that will kill 99% of players that'll go through there on their first try. So yeah, it's one of the many dumb changes he never did. And also, Future Connected is also full of very bad jankiness there too, because the blindness shoulder was more like a test map originally, so it didn't really have too much time to be polished in the original. They transitioned that into HD there too. However, though, they didn't really take too much accommodation to the change in jumping, so a lot of times they'll try to jump up a ledge, but it'll not give even though it's the only way up. And that's one thing that I really don't like about the changes in Definitive Edition.
Also, Xenoblade just made a comment about how Valak being too big and how he wishes they put more landmarks, and that is something that in future Xenoblade games, as well as Future Connect, I believe they did at least in my opinion, they did a much better job of distributing the landmarks. So it's one of those things I wish they would have made a change for in Definitive Edition, but in the newer games themselves, it's something that they've been improving on. So.
And yeah, they're also filling up the area with more things to do in those small areas, such as collection points, treasure chests, unique monsters, all that stuff. So it gives a lot more meaning to these areas instead of just gigantic empty areas with not really much to them. Like, over there is a Jack Geyser, or I guess Jack Geyser as they pronounce it in the game. That'll lead you up to a side quest you can do, even though there's an alternative way up there. Yeah, all around, it's a very long and kind of boring area to go through. There's still that one stupid staircase into, which staircase? Was it the one in Uri? Because that one's also kind of a dumb one. Any other stupid staircases? I guess in Indol too.
Else that Orph has been doing all run, but it's topical right now, is that as he gets the landmark here, he's going to be skip traveling to it, even though it doesn't take him very far forward. And the reason for that is basically that in Definitive Edition, they really sped up skip travel times. So in a lot of areas, it actually ends up just being faster to skip travel to a landmark that you just discovered. Even though it's not saving much on movement, it does save a little bit of time.
Yeah, so right now we're going on through the lava tube because the entryway into the Ase Tower is currently frozen over. So now we're heading on through the lava tube in order to get a lava rock in order to defrost the entrance there. So now we're trying to chase this Ferris. I don't think we'll be able to beat him to the tube. Yeah, it looks like he won. Yeah, so right over here we get ourselves the only required unique monster in order to beat the game. There's technically like 4 of them otherwise, but for all intents and purposes, that's the only one that we currently fight. That's because the others, there are methods that we can skip actually having to fight them.
Yeah, I believe there's one other one that we are going to be killing in this run, just simply because the skip is pretty precise and it's pretty costly if you miss it. Even in most non-marathon runs, most people don't go for it, but you can technically skip that one as well. So Conflaking Orpheolus is the only one that's actually required, since he is directly tied to a story objective.
Yeah, so now we're starting to go down the lower portions of Valak Mountain. I'll say that the reroute here, like around the launch of the game, was actually really interesting because for the longest time we used to go the other way around the around the tower to get to the lower portions of Valak. However, though, the minimap, which tries to prioritize the fastest way forward, give or take some bits, actually highlighted that this way might be a little bit faster, and then a little bit of rerouting and retiming showed that this pathway was a little bit faster than going the other way. I guess the auto-tracking thing is also a pretty good mention there, too. I guess one other thing I should mention, though, since it turned to Blizzard very conveniently, is that Valak Mountain does have Blizzard conditions, not really too prevalent right now, but there is one unique monster that only summons during the Blizzard, which is Avalanche Odyssey, which normally here I do a plug about a potential super boss that we could do for the donation incentive, but thanks to all you being so generous, we managed to hit that incentive really early, so after this run, once we beat the game, we'll go ahead and fight the unique monsters, and I'll just say, those unique monsters are going to be very interesting to watch because the strategies are going to be very interesting. Yeah, so otherwise we're almost done here with Valak.
With what Xenoblade said, though, the auto track sucks in some other areas. Yeah, there's a lot of areas where it just takes you in very strange directions. Though I believe both in Valak Mountain and in Bionis Interior, it actually shows you the exact route that we take through the area in the speedrun. So in some areas it's good, in some areas it's less good.
It also doesn't take into account all the fancy skips we do too. Yeah, stick around. The super bosses are going to be fun to watch. So we're almost done here with auto run simulator. So at this time, probably a good time for a donation or two.
Well, what I should make sure we know is that even though we have met the incentives for the super bosses here, we've got a number of other bid wars that are going on in incentives, and you'll see some of those if you go to rpglimitbreak.com/donate. That's where you can donate, and we'll put up something in the chat here in a moment to show you that. But coming up next, the next couple bid wars are all Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. We have you can choose the Majin color, and there are 6 different options on there. Definitely worth it. Saying right now, pink is only winning by $5. You can definitely snatch that one up. And right now, the character's name is Nami. Very appropriate. That's only a $10 donation in order to beat that one out. So, and right now, there's nothing. You can really snipe the lead on the English or Japanese version for the voice language. So I definitely want to see which one you're going to do there.
Alright then, so with this all done, we are now finally done with the Bionis section, and we're over halfway through the run now. So the first half might be auto run simulator. The second half is really going to pick up because the complexity of these areas are going to be a lot more interesting there too.
Yeah, now that the game I was just going to say, now that the game has kind of set up most of the main story points, it kind of really opens up a lot of areas and lets you just kind of have fun, more or less. And since you're in a less organic areas, we're heading to the Mechonis, which is a more mechanical area, they are able to do a lot more with the geometry. So that leads to more creativity for us and more interesting areas to go through.
Yeah, one thing I do kind of want to mention here on the first part of Valak Mountain, sorry, not Valak, Sword Valley, there we go, is that you can see the snow melting away from Sword Valley into as you get further on, because at the start there's like quite a bit of snow and then just all melts away, which is a pretty cool transition throughout the area too. It's one of the cooler transitions you can see there too. So now we're beginning the Sword Valley, which is a very technical area of the run. At this point of the game, you get yourself the option of selling everything you have, which is like you need like a crap load of money in order to be able to purchase all the anti-mechon weaponry, because we are now in mechon territory, so kind of obvious what we'll be fighting for quite a while.
And to kind of give a story update, because quite a bit happened in that last cutscene, essentially we were meeting the Silverface mechon that has Fiora inside of her, but then Metalface, who reveals himself to be Mumkar from the prologue, came out and essentially tried to stop us.
Thanks, Smash Bros, for that spoiler.
Yeah. Whenever we defeated him, a bunch of other face mechon, including one with a gold face, comes down, and he essentially takes both of Mumkar and the silver face mechon away, essentially saying that if we want her back, to come fight him on Mechonis. So that's currently what we're doing. We're working our way across the sword into the main body of Mechonis so that we can go and essentially try to figure out what's going on and try and get Fiora back if possible.
Yeah, so Going on through the portions of Sword Valley, this area is actually really interesting because there's two major ways you can go through the area. The first way, which is what we're going to be doing, is that we are going to be pressing buttons in order to lower the gates down in order to progress through the area. The alternative you can do is that you can go through like side areas and you can weave between the gates and just go across the areas, because here on the lower level there's some stronger mecha around, such as this fortress unit up there, which is famous for being one of the hardest types of enemies in the game. You can avoid them, or you can fight them from upper level where they don't have access to their devastating Titan stam. You can just weave your way across the areas here and there too. Which is one reason why I really like Sword Valley a lot. It gives a lot of depth to the area, and there's multiple ways you can tackle this, plus a massive back area that we do not go to whatsoever.
Yeah, in this run we're mostly going to be sticking to the bottom layer until we're almost towards the end, where we're going to be essentially taking a shortcut across the top. Just simply because running up to the gates and waiting for them to open ends up being faster than the snaking path above. However, casually the upper path ends up being a lot easier to go through because there's a lot less mech on up there, which means you have to go through a lot less fights to get through these areas.
Yeah, so heading on into a Dolgan Outpost, we get a surprise quest, Secure Dolgan Outpost. We do not do any of the side quests here because it's slow, and they do lock themselves off once you progress through the story. I guess at this point I could do a little bit of a plug, in that I've been doing a bit of shenanigans with New Game Plus 100%, which I'll be trying to do a full speed run of New Game Plus 100% sometime in December. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting run just riding through the game because we're using Ryan a whole lot in that run, and plus we go throughout the areas defeating unique monsters in a peculiar fashion too, so it's definitely interesting. Because I want to make note that there's also another unique monster here that's famous, Mischievous Nefarious, which is behind the third gate back there. We did not fight him in the speedrun, but in 100%, he is a nightmare, at least in normal 100%.
Also, someone in chat asked how much a regular run of this takes. If you're doing a casual playthrough, if you don't really do much of the quests, let's say probably about 30 hours, 40 hours. If you're doing all the quests, it can take you upwards of 80 to 100. And for a new game speedrun, most of the active categories are about 5 hours long.
And then 100% 21 hours from Legrand, I do believe.
Yeah, Legrand has a 21-hour, 100% speedrun.
And then New Game Plus, that's been heavily optimized down pretty recently too.
Sounds like the 21-hour one did not make the marathon this year.
Yeah, real shame though. Yeah, so we're getting pretty close to the end of Sword Valley right now. I was trying to head really close to that pool of ether because sometimes the AI will just dive right in and take a little bit of an acid bath.
Yeah, something that we haven't seen a whole lot of in this run, but the AI can be very bad at navigating through areas. This isn't really a problem for the speedrun, and even in casual play, it's not really like an issue, but it can lead to some pretty funny stuff where the AI just falls off of edges or just runs into death water.
And also they can do that during fights too, which is famous for one of the endgame fights where they love taking an acid bath in a fight. You want them alive. Yeah, so we're heading on into the final portions of Sword Valley for the sake of us going through it. This back portion of Sword Valley has a lot to it too, like 3 unique monsters back here and quite a few areas you can explore. However though, do not go down any of those pathways because A, it's slow, and B, you gotta hurry up to Fiora. So now we're fighting Metal Face for the very last time. One of the things that Metal Face says after this fight is, "Not like this." So if we can get some "not like this" in the chat, that'd be great. Also, Ryan, I don't know why they did not start attacking there. I thought he pressed attack, I guess not. Not like this. I don't know why the thing didn't go through. So with that all done, that's pretty much going to be the last time we're going to be using Shulk for major boss fights from here on out now. That's because, as you saw in that fight, despite us using Conspector Sword Drive, the DPS is not really that fantastic, so you might need to get some, you might need a bigger gun, to say the least. I see, although it's not like this. Poor Mumkar, that poor fool.
We're able to do a little bit of a jump down there to the bridge to avoid essentially needing to run down an extra set of ramps. Saves a little bit of time and just gives us a nicer straight line path to the exit of this area.
Don't jump too close to the edge, otherwise you might get a fast fall, and that may or may not have happened to me before on a PB attempt.
And we probably have time for one donation if there are any that are sitting around.
Well, I do have one thing that I can mention here, and actually make it two things. I'll be really quick about this. If you notice on the side of the stream, on the left side of the Twitch stream, you'll see that the Nami logo is there, but also the Questing for Glory logo is there, and you'll see that all those, well, in fact, the Questing for Glory one actually comes from Kevin. He's been our artist for Questing for Glory since 2017, so I'm going to drop his Twitter handle in chat right now. And if you want to keep an eye on the NAMI one, that is the fundraiser that we are trying to make sure that we are covering here. We want to make sure that NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, receives lots of help from us. So every donation goes to it.
Alright then, so heading on into Galahad Fortress. I love the music here in Galahad, but this location is just way too short for its own good. Because we're going to be flying through it, even on casually, this area is really quick. So the first thing we're going to do is sneak behind this Mechon and stab it in the back. Totally easy. Take its key, and now we'll be using it to unlock a cell up ahead. It's important that we get the one-shot there, thanks to like first attack plus and the back attack bonus. Because if we don't, then we'll have a swarm of angry Mechon going after us, but thanks to all those one-shots, the Mechon know better than to try to harass us.
Yeah, even with the level advantage, those enemies will still try and pick a fight with us if we do not one-shot the enemy. But luckily, if you do kill in a single shot, the enemies won't really notice that you're in a combat, and they will just simply not wake up.
I guess at this time you can explain the unique monster skips.
Sure, so throughout this run, there's going to be a couple of unique monster skips. Coming up here is the first one, and essentially this is what Earthcloak is so important for. If we just sneak up right along the side here, with Earthcloak, he just barely won't be able to see us as we hit the button. I believe there's going to be one other time that we use it like this in the run, and there's another one that we can do, but we're not going to be going for it because it only saves about 3 seconds. It's really costly if you miss it, and just with the jumping physics changes to Definitive Edition, it's really hard to get consistently.
Okay, so we're pressing buttons to press a big button in the middle in order to turn off the Galahad Fortress. This Galahad Fortress is kind of sucking all the ether out of Bionis right now, so we don't really want that happening, so also lets us progress further onto the base. Yeah, even going through this place 100%, this area is very small. Like, you just go through the 2 side rooms on the top floor and just fight the unique monsters along the pathway, and that's all there is here to Galahad. There's only 3 unique monsters total, like 2 optional locations, and yeah. It's a cool area though, just I wish we were a little bit longer, but that's because the long Mykonos areas are coming up pretty soon. Alright, quest complete. I guess with this all done, there's also a semi-unique monster skip that we're going to be doing. It's very free, we just jump beside it, and its field range is so small that you can get away with it.
Yeah, down here coming from the next, on the lower level, there's going to be one unique monster we're going to be sneaking past. I think you might be able to get past him without Earthcloak, but you'd need to take a wider berth around him. So the Earthcloak just lets us sneak by him nice and easily right in front of his face. And also we're going to be jumping over the railing here just so that we don't have to walk in on these lower levels in as strict of a pattern. We can kind of take a more direct line.
Alright then, so with us being behind that Mechon, now we are going to be changing Charlotte for the lead for pretty much the rest of the run. We will be using Shulk a little bit more for a couple more fights, but for all intents and purposes, Charlotte is now going to be our lead, so at this point we're going to have some multi-enemy fights, including what I probably consider to be the hardest fight of the category, at least for Charlotte route. That's because we got ourselves a pretty annoying fight with Fiora's Convection. Here the premise of the fight is that we have this Nemesis in the middle, but we cannot kill her, otherwise we have to go for these guard units. Here we're going to be going on to the side, using our arts to try to one-shot as many of these enemies as we can. And here Ryan's going to be kind of a derp, like that really like the yeah, that's actually a really clean Fiora's Conviction. Yeah, so you can kind of see it being the meme of like of the hider, where Ryan we have like the two imposing Hydras, and then you have Ryan being the derp one. And this is just Ryan just standing there not knowing what to do. We can even try pushing him closer into the boss's range, like he's pretty much right there, but he will just not interact. Because that was a good example of that. Otherwise, yeah, that fight's pretty much just an auto-scroller. With that, we're done with chapter 11, so now we're approaching chapter 12, which is probably the second shortest chapter of the game. It's really fast.
Should I give a bit of a story dump real quick?
Yep.
So
that's
while
right. I just want to
oh, go ahead.
I just want to say this now. Charlotte's going to be the carry. Traditionally, Charlotte has been considered as one of the worst party members in all of RPGs. Kind of funny how, because of one little glitch, Charlotte becomes the best here in Xenoblade. I guess now is a good time for the story dump now.
Sure. So as we were getting to the end of the area, though, there, at the start, Face Nemesis was complete, which is Fiora, was completely under the control of Egil, and that's why we had that first fight. As we enter the second fight, she started to resist him, and Egil, Yaldabaoth, essentially used what is called the Apocrypha to restrict the power of the Monado so we can't use it against him, and essentially had Fiora fight back against us. The bottom of Galahad Fortress during the fight ended up breaking apart and falling off, so us and all of our party members were essentially dropped down into the ocean, where we washed up on the shore. So this next couple of areas are going to be essentially just us trying to reunite with our friends, and essentially just trying to reconvene and figure out where exactly we've washed up.
So yeah, so here on the Fallen Arm, we get ourselves Fiora, who is going to be our last party member of the run. We've been kind of hinting at 7, which is referred to as Fiora. Thanks, Smash Brothers, for that wonderful spoiler! Yeah, so now we're just heading on through this area, and going to be the second to last fight that we're going to be controlling Shulk with. Otherwise, if we were going for the unique monster skips, this would be the last fight that Shulk would be used in. Yeah. I guess, I think there was something I was going to mention here, but I forgot. Oh, yeah. Fiora, in terms of this category, is hardly used at all. I think she's used for one fight, and that is it. For other fights, though, Charlotte is a lot more, I guess Fiora is used a lot more often, because Fiora has the, has a very high auto attack rate, which will inflict the physical defense down really easily. In this category, though, not really so much so. While we kill things before we really need PDD. And plus, Fiora does not have any good options for doing things. Also here, we're normally transition to Charlotte for this segment because Charlotte is a little bit faster for the next fight, but I just wanted to get the alley-oop with Ryan before switching over to Charlotte. At this point, we're going to be doing the last fight of the chapter, since this chapter is very short in general. Yeah, so this side of the this side of the story arc is just Ryan saying that he's feeling a little bit inferior to Shulk because Shulk's more or less been protecting him instead of Ryan protecting Shulk. And Ryan's doing a good job. He's just a little bit of a derp when it comes to using his arts. Also with this fight, we're just controlling you, jumping to the other guy, and then using a buster. Otherwise, that's really it for this chapter, so if there's anything you would like to mention right now?
I don't think there's anything right now. There is one silly thing that can happen here that I always personally look out for runs, which is there's going to be a couple of antles on the walkway here, and one of them can push the other one off, and it will land on this little ramp that we're jumping down to. It doesn't look like it happened here, and it's not super common to happen, but it is always something that I look out for.
Yeah, the AI...
Oh,
yeah, the enemies can be a little bit derpy with this. Can be a little bit derpy because sometimes they can push some enemies off, and occasionally you see some experience growth. I mean, it's a little bit helpful in I guess in regular New Game runs, but in New Game Plus, it's not really too useful. Yeah, so now we're heading on over to the active village and getting our last members who are on the shore here. A little bit of a touching moment with between Ricky and Dunban. But here we are switching Melia over to the lead. Hereupon Ricky is going to be tagging with us for quite a little bit because the next time we're changing party members won't be until about midway through the next area. Yeah, so I guess at this point we're going to be doing a little bit of a detour right now because we're going to be heading up this landmark up ahead. Just so that way when we do our next skip travel, we can just skip travel here, avoid having to walk out of the village and everything like that. Go ahead and hit that up. Now we're heading on into the village, which is pretty much the last area here. And the Fallen Arm theme is pretty good. Not my personal favorite area, those are coming up, but the area here is really good. In 100%ing, this area is pretty easy, all things considered. Like, all except for one quest chain is open up right now.
Also, because we kind of want to get through it before the end of this area, do you want me to go ahead and talk about how each character is within Arts and Inheritance now that we have all 7 of them together?
Yeah.
Alright, so in terms of Arts Inheritance, a bunch of the characters have different things that they're good at, but in general, there's a pretty fast list of which characters are better than others. Probably the worst character for Arts Inheritance would be Fiora. There's not, as far as I know, there's no real concrete use that she has. There's a couple of niche things that she can do, but other than that, there's nothing really great for her. She has a lot of really long animations for her arts, such as Magstorm and Zero Gravity, and because of that, she's just not really useful for anything. After that, Melly would probably be the next most useless. She's, again, not really used for much. She has a couple of things she can do with Ether Arts, but most of the good arts for Arts Inheritance are physical, and Melia just has approximately 0 strength stat, so she just isn't very useful compared to a lot of the other characters. Next up would be Shulk. While Shulk is a great character, has good stats and a really powerful weapon, a lot of his really good animations are tied to the really slow Monado arts, such as Berserker being tied to Monado Eater, which is the longest animation in the entire game. And because of this, while he isn't a bad character, he does fall off towards the mid and late game when you need to start being able to hit enemies for more and more damage. However, he does have a lot of good animations for some of the strong Ether arts, so he can make a pretty decent Ether attacker. Next up would be... Actually, do you want to explain this real quick?
Yeah, I kind of want to interject here a little bit. We're doing a little bit of the sidetrack over here to get the connecting bridge early. For 2 major reasons. The first reason is that we're going to be skip traveling here after the, pretty much after a couple cutscenes in order to head off to Meconis. And the other reason is that there's a unique monster that's patrolling the beach up ahead. However, though, since we pick up that landmark, the unique monster will be going away, so we can go in and snag this item really easily. So, go ahead and continue now.
Sure, so the next character would be Rhine. Rhine is overall a very good character. He has strong weapons. He has, relatively fast animations, and overall is just a very strong character. However, he does have a big limitation in that he can't freely spam Magnum Charge like other characters. He needs to have his talent art built, and that limits some of the usefulness since he can't one-shot enemies as easily. However, he does have access to being able to use arts from any range, which the only other character who easily has access to that is Ricky.
And Dunman too can.
Can he? I thought that he could. I thought that it didn't quite work from Brad. I haven't tested in a while, so.
I know it works with his talent art that you can hit within your range.
Okay. But next character, topically, would be the hero pawn Ricky, our favorite pineapple. Ricky overall doesn't seem like he would be a fantastic character. He has a lot of pretty mediocre animations, but pretty much everything Ricky is good at comes from one thing, which is the tantrum animation, which is a pretty fast 3-hit animation, and it just happens to map to a lot of really good AoE arts, such as Final Cross, Lariat, Stream Edge, and Mind Blast. The big draw of this with Ricky is that you can put arts over his talent art to be able to spam any art without cooldown, which means Ricky is pretty much the only viable strong Ether attacker in the entire game for Arts Inheritance, which gives him a very powerful niche, and it also makes him very good at certain things that most other characters are very bad at. Next up at the second best character for Arts Inheritance would be Dunban. He has overall pretty fast animations, strong weapons, and high stats, but overall his animations are slightly slower than Charlotte, who is the best character for Arts Inheritance. All her animations are fast. She has a strength boosting skill tree and good enough strength on her own, very powerful weapons, and one of the things that we're not going to be seeing in this run, but her AI is actually also really cooperative, and that it will use Peerless immediately at the start of battle. So in addition to being one of the best player control characters for high DPS, she's also one of the best supporting characters in the entire game.
Yeah, so for all those who say that Charlotte is absolutely useless, I like to beg otherwise because of Arts Inheritance. So coming on over here to Mechonis, we're doing a little bit of a... That's never happened before. Normally by the time the thing goes green, I get the landmark there. The game's being a little jank today, so now we're heading off to Mechonis, which is going to be a very technical area. I'll probably let Arcanite explain a lot of the stuff, because Mechonis Field is the most technical and probably most difficult area of the game, just because of all the skips here. A little bit rough because it's 2 hours into the run, too.
Yeah, it's going to be a load before you get up the first skip, but then there's going to be a lot to talk about. So if there's any donations or anything to plug real quick, now is probably a good time.
Good to hear, and I can absolutely help you out with that. I just want to remind everybody, we are only $63 away from fighting the Mega Boss 50 million hit points Final Fantasy XII monster, Yasmet. And I just dropped the link in there where you can go, but we also want to make sure that we let other people know that we are doing the speed run, so we can, well, the whole marathon really, so we can help out those who are suffering from mental illness. So if you want to use either one of those hashtags, that's QFGHH2 and hashtag together for MH, that's together for mental health, it would definitely help to spread the message that we're helping to raise money here for the National Alliance on Mental Illness.
So the first thing... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll let you go first.
Yeah, you're probably going to say the same thing I was going to do.
I was going to say that the first thing that we're doing here is that the conveyor belts in Mechonis Field are a lot faster than the ones in Alchemoth. So it's a lot more apparent that you maintain the speed into the double jump there. So save a little bit of time on movement by just maintaining that higher speed. The big thing that we're going to be doing throughout Mechonis Field is that this is a vertical area like Aethermine, except now we're traveling up instead of downwards, which leads to a lot of interesting interactions with us trying to travel the horizontal distance between layers without necessarily having to take all of the intended paths around. So there's going to be some pretty cool skips with that. But to start off here, we're going to have to ride up this elevator and get up to the next layer where the first interesting thing is going to be happening.
Yeah. Also, one thing I am going to mention right now, though, is a little bit of a change to definitive edition, is that elevators travel up a little bit slower than they did in the original. It's a little bit apparent on the second one, where in the original we would be so behind by the time the elevator reaches the top, but here we're able to make it to the end before the elevator makes it to the top. Not this elevator, but the next one we go up on. Yeah, so there's a little bit of waiting here before things really pick up here on the next floor, which I'll probably let you explain this, because yeah, we're coming up on probably the second hardest skip of the run.
Yeah, so as we go up here, we're going to have one more button to press, and that will activate a couple of power switches for us. And one of those power switches is going to raise up a cylinder. So I can explain the skip a lot more as we get a little bit closer to that. But essentially, you can see basically directly ahead of Orph right now, there's a climbable wall that leads down to a platform, and we want to get there from the cylinder. So in order to do that, we're essentially going to have to jump over the railing on the cylinder and try to land right at the edge of the platform. There's a couple of different strategies to make it up, to make the jump, and it's overall a lot more lenient than it was in the original Xenoblade Chronicles due to the jumping changes, but it's still a pretty tight jump, and being 2.5 hours into the run, or I guess closer to 2 hours in the run, it's a very scary jump whenever you're on good pace, because this is a lot more costly than most of the other jumps, because there's death water down below and you cannot skip travel out of it and you can't load out of it. So if you land in the water, you are probably losing upwards of a minute.
Yeah, before we do so, I'll be doing another safety save just to be safe. Which will probably be the last safety save of the run, because most of the rest of the stuff's more or less consistent.
Yeah, I'll be quiet to let Orph focus on this.
Yeah. Alright, we just go here, line ourselves up there. Alright, we did it. Yeah, thankfully it is a whole lot easier than in the originals. In the originals it was a lot more unforgiving. So here we're switching over to Shulk now. Valley Pineapple Ricky time is now over. I don't know, probably by the...
Oh, I'll let you go ahead. Oh, I was just going to make a quick comment that one more interesting thing about these elevators is that we found, I think it was found a while ago, but it became more known recently, that these elevators do a weird thing to the state that your characters are in. So if you ride one of these elevators, you will no longer be able to maintain momentum when jumping off of conveyor belts until a couple of conditions have been met. Either you swap the party leader, you save and reload, or a cutscene happens. So there's going to be some conveyors on the next floor that we're not going to be jumping off of, and that is going to be why.
Yeah, so starting right here is going to be the next elevator. This is going to be the last of the elevators that we're going to be taking up for a while, because we got a little bit of something big up ahead that we're going to have to get across. But we get a little bit of a load time before the next big skip of the run. Yeah, this is that elevator I was mentioning that is that by the time you... Okay, I was worried I was going to jump off, fall off. I was a little too zealous for my upward movement. Alright. Is there anything you want to add right here before we get to the next big one?
I think so. I think there might be enough time for one quick donation.
Which is what I have. We have the Fuel, who just donated $50, and I saw that it went towards the Yizmat fight. Love watching great games run super fast for a great cause. Keep up the amazing job. Thank you for that $50 donation.
Alright, nice. I guess going on forward, we're going to be heading on into the next floor, which contains a skip that we're not going to be really doing in this category. Right here we get the lower bulkhead bridge, which our goal is going to be opening up the bulkhead. However, though, the button's going to be on the other side of the platform, which we're going to be doing a lot of shenanigans getting to, because there's one unique monster here that we have to take on before we can actually press the button. We just
So I believe...
I was
going to explain the strat. So I believe Orph is going to do a strat where he's going to jump down before killing the unique monster and essentially use his midair movement to wrap around to the button. Essentially, we want to land near the button at the bottom because as you're getting up, you're able to activate it, and it just saves a little bit of time on movement to do it this way. Then when we come back up to the top, the unique monster is going to be guarding the switch that opens the bulkhead up top. There is a pretty precise jump you can do over the two sets of railings that you can see there to land right in the corner and activate the button with Earth Cloak. However, this is a really difficult jump to do in Definitive Edition, and it doesn't save much time. So most runners are going to opt nowadays to just kill the unique monster and take that about 3 seconds of time lost compared to the skip. The strat that we're going to be using to kill him is essentially just using Magnum Charge and then P Sword Drive and cleaning up with backslash if we needed. And we don't want our allies to be doing anything, so we just call them to our side because we don't want them to use anything AoE and upset all the nearby enemies. Plus, we want to keep that back attack bonus from an unnoticed enemy, so we don't want them to aggro the enemy before us.
Yeah, otherwise we have to jump over the ledge, and because movement being more horizontal, we don't really have the time to actually make it across. So at this point in the time, we're going to head and swapping over to Ryan and Carla. Because at this point, we're pretty much done with Shulk for much of the upper parts of Mechonis for quite a while, plus we don't want Shulk in the party right now. Yeah, so right there was just kind of an instance. We don't really know what's going on for sure there. Like switching party leaders doesn't really change things too much, but it's not really too much of an issue because we'll need this party anyways. One of the things though coming up is that there's another cycle coming up. However though, there's an optional save load you can do, but it's not too imperative that we do it because the time loss is not that much.
Yeah, so we're going to be riding some vents up here, and it's pretty... If you're pretty careless, you can actually fall back down if you're too aggressive with your horizontal movement in the air. But as long as you play it safe, there's nothing really that can go wrong here. We just barely missed the previous cycle, but it's not that long of a cycle, so it's not really worth a save load, at least not usually. And as long as we make the upcoming vent cycle, it doesn't really matter how long we take in this section.
And also another cool thing about this area is that it also changed a little bit from the original, mostly with how the ice mechanics work with the slope up there.
Yeah, I can go ahead and talk about that. So in the original, I believe it was actually faster to run up the Mechonis wound while jumping.
Missed the cycle, sadly. I think probably was mine being a little slow.
But you can actually just run up that, and originally I'm pretty sure it was actually faster than riding the vents. With enough quick step, you can still run up the slope in Definitive Edition, but you don't get as much speed, and thus it's not faster than taking the actual vents to get up the intended way.
should just mention that we had one donation come in from the tool-assisted master, the Axeman himself, $50. I'm having a vision. Millions of people suffer from mental illness, but by supporting NAMI, we can change the future. He just did. We have reached the Yazmat incentive,
Nice.
and we are now moving on to the next ones.
Cool. I guess with this all done, we're now starting the upper Mechonis section, which is going to be a very interesting section coming up ahead because there's 2 or 3 fancy jumps we do here, pretty much all consecutively, and all these jumps can be a little bit scary, but for the most part they're consistent.
It's also worth mentioning that something in either the events or the cutscene gave us the ability to maintain momentum off of conveyors again, so we're able to get a big jump off of that one.
Yeah.
So the first jump is going to be coming up here. There was an old strat where we jumped down onto one of these little gear looking things on a lower platform. We're going to jump down here onto this little sidewalk, and then from here, before you would jump down onto that gear. However, there was a more recent strat, I believe Orsa, it was found by Soru, where you can land on these little cylinders and still survive, and it saves 1 fall damage animation, and I know a lot of people say that they are a lot more consistent with this strat than with the old one.
Yeah. It's a little bit easier to fall down to there. I guess with that first one done, now we're heading on to the next one. Also, I'm just going to say this right now. The naming themes here across much of the Mechonis is very weird because it gives like an M76 and a name there too.
Yeah, so
I don't know what's up with the names, but they're pretty weird.
Yeah, we're going to do a couple of quick jumps down here just to skip having to walk around to this area. And then another jump down just simply to cover some distance and so we don't have to climb down.
With this, the main premise here with the lower portion is activating the 2 pillars there in order to press the button to activate the central elevator head on up. Then we're skipping back here to the upper bulkhead to head to the other area because it's a little bit faster to go down this way because the platform on the lower side does not quite reach the other one like it is up there because of the mechanics of the train there.
And there's going to be one more jump coming up here towards the end here as we get down to that last platform. There's a pretty decent setup for it that I think Orph goes for as well, where you're going to want to essentially jump on the railing and then fall off down to
actually do it a different one.
Oh, you do a different setup? But essentially we're going to be jumping down and just barely clearing the railing on the lower platform. So we'll see if Orph is able to get this.
Yeah, I go over a little bit to the side and then jump off to the side.
Alright, nice. But it was able to make it. That's another pretty costly jump because usually you'll end up falling all the way down to the bottom of Mechonis Field if you miss that. And it's not the scariest jump in the world, but it is pretty costly if you happen to mess it up.
Yeah, and that's one of the jumps that's a little bit different from the original. Because in the original, you could just go right there. And if I actually go to the right one. But yeah, because originally you could just jump right down to the bottom. However, though, because of the changes in Definitive, it's just enough of a difference for you to not make it and fall all the way down there. Mind you, it's like a 1.5-minute fall. Yeah, it's a catastrophic time loss if you don't make it, but thankfully it's consistent enough to not be too much of a worry. Right here is probably going to be one of the biggest instances of using momentum off this elevator here, this escalator.
Yeah, because combined with a little bit of a downslope at the end of this conveyor, as well as just the long stretch, we're able to get quite a lot of momentum over these 2 jumps.
I jumped a little too late to maintain a lot of it, but it's still quite a bit of a one. So coming up ahead is probably going to be the second most technical boss fight of the game. I'll go ahead and let Arcanite explain it because there's a lot of stuff going on in it, but the main premise here is that Ryan has the engineer built explicitly for this fight.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, Ryan has 40% Earth Cloak. I mentioned this at the beginning of the run, and the reason is solely for this fight. The 40% Earth Cloak is just enough to where we can get behind some of the cover in this upcoming fight to avoid getting a vision. And essentially the way this fight works is that you're in a very long hallway where the enemy Jadeface is essentially a sniper mech on. So he'll be trying to snipe you with linear laser 4 as you run down the hallway. However, because he won't see us right away, he won't be able to use it. And this linear laser 4 is hard-coded to always give you a vision, even if it isn't dealing a lot of damage. So essentially what the strategy for the fight is to use Earth Cloak, and then to go ahead and move behind some cover and walk through cover that is close enough to where he will use his other art called, I believe, Quick Cannon. And this art, because it is not his talent art and it's not the sniping art, it will not give you a vision. So because of this, we're able to skip a vision tag, which saves about 6 to 8 seconds. I'm not sure exactly how much time it saves, but it does save enough time to be worth going for, and it's pretty much the sole reason why we run Engineer Belt on Rhine.
And also, this is a good fight to showcase the power of Activate Monado 2, because our goal is just to get within enough range for the system to actually let us lock onto base over there. So yeah, this fight is actually kind of hilarious if you have any Earthquake, because for the most part it's just like Bossing playing here, and right now it's just a little bit of a casual stroll down to the arena before he actually sees us. So yeah, so it's roughly around this range when he sees us, and then the time for him to activate an art is enough time for us to actually get to this area here. Now we're just trying to queue things up. GG. And with this, we outsnipe the world's best sniper. With that, we're done here in Conus Field. After this point, though, Sword Valley and Galahad Fortress have both locked off, but for the sake of this category, we don't really care about those places anymore. 100% though, it's a little bit of a oopsies, we forgot something there, like a unique monster.
Yeah, and the reason why it closed off is that if you remember, we mentioned earlier that the High wanted to form an alliance with the other people of Bionis, and they are now launching their attack against Mechonis across the sword, so we are no longer able to go to those areas.
Advance up on heroes! Yeah, so a couple other things happened in that fight, namely is that a revelation with Fiora, in a little bit. Get a drink water.
Yeah, sure. So essentially what happened in that is that we learned that Mayneth, who is the god of Mechonis, was put into the spirit of, or her spirit was put into Fiora's body by Vinaya, I believe her name is, who is essentially Egil's sister and the right hand of, and essentially his right hand assistant, basically. So we now know that there is essentially the god of Mechonis is residing within Fiora, and she's able to give us a bit of plot exposition on essentially what happened to Mechonis in the past and why Egil is wanting to destroy the Bionis. We'll get a bit more exposition to that as we get into some of these later areas, but kind of just that little bit of information was dropped now.
Yeah. With this all done, we are now done here in Mechonis Field, which was pretty much the most technical area of the game. Now we're going on to a central factory, which isn't quite as technical, but still has a couple of cool things here and there too. And one of the reasons why I have vibration on is explicitly so that way I have a Q on when to grab onto a fighter coming up. Yeah, Mechonis Field is probably my favorite area of the game. Central Factory is really up there because I like the aesthetic here, and also the music here is pretty underrated too. It's definitely a cool area to go to. It's like, yeah, we got a lot of work ahead of us here. Upon getting here, a fun little thing though is that on our first visit here to Central Factory, this is the only cutscene here on our first visit. Otherwise, for the most part, it's just doing a story quest to get on throughout much of the Central Factory. Yeah, the Central Factory is a interesting location here. So the conveyor belt's up ahead because we took that elevator there. We won't be able to get any rocket jumps off them, sadly, but it'd be cool if we could, like the original, but Definitive Edition jank. Yeah, I guess talking about Definitive Edition a little bit more since we have a little bit of leeway, is that Definitive Edition also comes with a side story Future Connected, which is its own which has its own categories too. There's any percent, which is about 32 minutes right now. I know that's been the world record's been brought down a little bit recently. There's also All for Inspectors, where the goal is to gather all the Inspectors before taking on the final boss. And then there's 100% where you where you get every single side quest and unique monster and all that stuff. It's actually a really fun one. I currently hold the world record for 100%. By the way, it's also a pretty free world record because that runs kind of terrible. But yeah, it's been pretty fun trying to optimize some of these games for 100%. Yeah, 100% in general for Xenoblade games is actually loads of fun. Yeah, so the first
we kind of glossed over it. Oh, it's once we kind of glossed over it there, but that one jump down the ladder is the only jump that's in this area, if I recall correctly. And
Yep.
we're able to activate this button from outside of the low railing just simply because the hitbox of it extends ever so slightly over this one edge here.
And because of that, some Mechon will come out of the hidey holes to the side. We don't really care about them. The other button opens up the doors behind us, which will let us fight a level 65 unique monster. That's a bit of a pain in the butt, to be honest. Yeah, also those Mechon love to get in your way trying to get up to the next level, so... Coming up ahead, we're going to be doing another elevator, so probably a good time for a quick donation here.
Not a problem. We've got them. I've got a $15 donation that was anonymous. Thank you so much. And also from Bill the Heel, $25 donation. And along with some of those, we actually had a leader change as far as the color of the Majin for Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. It is now green that is leading over pink, and there are 6 different options. I encourage everybody to go take a look at all of those bit wars that are going on, because there's not too much time. It's going to come faster than you think, and you should get those ones in first.
So coming up here, we're going to be coming up to a bit of a combat section that I know me and I assume other people refer to just simply as bomb parts, because we need to be able to blow up this vent, and I think Orph has a bit of a joke about that, so sorry for cutting you off. But
yeah, essentially, we're a little suspicious.
Essentially, we're going to be wanting to go ahead and kill off these 3 enemies, each of them drop a bomb part. And recently I did a little bit of rerouting to this for the second one, where using the fact that you get extra damage from behind, you're able to 2-shot him without any buffs, which is about 5 seconds faster than the old strategy. So kind of just goes to show that, we mentioned this before, but if anyone's at all interested in... Oh, that was a weird damage range.
Don't know what happened there.
But it's just one of those things that goes to show, like Orph mentioned earlier, if anyone wants to kind of play around with some stuff, maybe you'll find something. There's quite literally endless amounts of strategies and optimizations that can be made to this category if people are creative enough to come up with them, so...
Yeah, so this fight here, we're just building up the 3-punch in order to ensure the 1-shot. We don't have to take down the add-ons on the side, which is actually really cool. With this all done, now it's going to be the last time we're using Shulk here, and that's for our last unique monster skip also. This unique monster skip's a pretty easy one, all things considered. For this one, we are approaching a little bit to the side to press a button from afar to avoid being spotted by this unique monster, because the button is thankfully pretty large.
And also because it's just about to happen, one of the things I always like to make comment of is that for some reason in Definitive Edition, the texture on this broken vent is wrong, and the corners are just invisible. And I don't know why it's like that, but I'm pretty sure it's not like that in the original.
Alright then, so with this all done, we are now done with Shulk, so now it's time for Charlotte to take the lead. Yeah, so, I don't know, we're acting pretty suspicious going on through the vents like this. Obligatory year-old joke here. So yeah, so coming on throughout the upper portions, there's a ladder you can climb there, but it's faster just to walk along the sides and head on up. So coming up ahead is going to be another area I kind of like to joke around with, is that this area up here, it's very cool. Oh my gosh, they loaded a lot of these mech on it until you realize that they're all just stock PNGs that are just flat. Now you can no longer unsee it.
I honestly never realized that.
Yeah, I realized in a run before, it's like, hey, yeah, this area is kind of cool. Oh my gosh, they're all flat.
They're definitive PNGs.
Yes.
I guess I ruined the factory event, so it only makes sense that you get to ruin this.
Yep. Yeah, so right there was another side quest, Daring Assault, which is a side quest that you can do. It's like, hey, yeah, this might be a story quest, but in all reality, you can just walk past them. So I guess I'll let you go ahead and explain this next part, because this next part's probably the second hardest fight of the game.
Yeah, coming here is a very difficult fight for the Charlotte route. It's going to be against 4 Mechon, 2 large Mechon that I can't remember the name of, then 2 smaller flying enemies called fairies, I believe. And essentially, I mentioned earlier that as enemies are dying, their hitboxes will still be active and AoEs will still be able to be used if they're in your range, even if there's not an enemy you're trying to hit in your range. And that can be really annoying because these enemies have very long death animations. So if you're not careful, you can very easily just sit there spamming out busters that don't actually accomplish anything. So it's very easy to lose a lot of time on this fight if you're not careful.
Yeah, thankfully I did come up with a little bit of a semi-consistent strategy just by running into this corner here while they all load in, so that way they can all hopefully stack up on each other. Otherwise, yeah. For the most part, though, we really don't want to try to double stack things. Alright, I'll go ahead and let you guys fight them. I'm going to go ahead and stock up one of these. Move over this way. Yeah, another case of the busters kind of overlapping, but for the most part, that fight went pretty well. They're all able to conjure up into the corners, that way we can get the one shot I guess try to plow them all down. That fight there, we were kind of spamming Buster there, just kind of showing how powerful Charlotte is, because she's able to rapid fire off Busters very quickly. Hence why Charlotte is the best character for Ars Inherited. With this all done, we're now done with Central Factory and heading on into Agnirtha, where it's been kind of building up throughout much of the part. A lot of people say that this is one of their favorite areas in the game. Personally, I really don't like this area that much, all because of 100% ruining this area. Also, we skipped probably one of the coolest cutscenes of the game there, too.
Yeah, I personally really like the nighttime theme for this area. Unfortunately, in the speedrun, it's daytime when we get here. So we don't get to hear that, but I definitely recommend maybe in between runs or something, going and finding the track on YouTube and giving it a listen, because it's a very good atmospheric song.
Yeah. Very somber there, too. Yes,
Yeah.
The reason why I really don't like Agnirtha is because of the side quest here. For one, you're trying to collect item wards because you need like 5 fairy tale geodes and 7 great springs. They're both pretty rare, along with quite a few Colony 6 stuff here too. The next thing though is that, as you see in this room, there is a lot of side quests here, a lot of monster subjugation, all that stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in that room that you have to take care of, and plus this area blocks off in like 1, 3, 4, 5, about 6 cutscenes or so. Pretty much after the 2 boss fights here, and Agnirtha, if you just avoid all the side content, is actually a very fast area. Yeah, so I'll probably go ahead and let you explain the story stuff here, because some pretty important stuff happens here.
Yeah, so here Maineth is essentially going to explain to us the reason why Egil is so insistent on destroying Bionis, which is basically that a very long time ago, there's probably like a time frame given in the game, but I don't remember it. Telethia, which we can now see corpses for all over the area, just randomly attacked from Bionis into Mykonos and destroyed the area and essentially killed off a lot of the people of Mykonos and chased the rest of them out. And this is what essentially started the battle between the Bionis and the Mykonos, where the Bionis was controlled by Egil's longtime friend, the giant Zanza, or the giant Arglos, I believe his name is, who was controlled by Zanza, and then Maineth controlling the Mykonos. At the end of the fight, both of them were extremely tired, and Zanza was locked away by the people of the Hyentia. And Shulk kind of has this realization of Zanza was a monster and I released him. So there's a bit of a dynamic with Shulk's character going on there. I guess to break away from that real quick, coming up here is something worth mentioning. Experienced Tristan
in a bad spot.
Yeah, experienced Tristan right there on the ledge, right in the way, is a unique monster that if he spots you, he will chase you all the way up to this next button, and it's really really annoying to have happen. So luckily Orph was able to navigate around that.
Yeah.
But I think that's most of the story. Do you want to talk about some like the parallels between Shulk and Egil and stuff?
Yeah, because Shulk and Egil are both very similar and yet completely opposite in different ways. The big thing that they're both similar is that they both had the opposite titans attack their kind of their hometown. Like Egil, his hometown is here in Agnirtha, which was wiped out because the Telethia, the agents of Bionis. Meanwhile, Shulk's hometown was attacked by Mechon in his hometown colony. And so you see the kind of parallels between those two. They both had pretty similar backstories in their quest for revenge. However, though, Shulk he was able to come to the realization that perhaps war is not a good thing, and they can perhaps live in peace. Also, find that in that cutscene. There we go. We're picking out Shiny Transporter there. Yeah, however, though, they're both pretty similar because Egil does not want to let up on his quest of revenge. Meanwhile, Shulk kind of wants to end the Bionis and Mykonos war. And one of my favorite quotes coming up here, besides here at Dio's Pillar, is that one of the quotes that Egil says is, "Your blade did not cut deep enough." I kind of like to interpret that cutscene as not necessarily Shulk's Minato cutting through Egil. It's more like his ideals is not fully there, and there's still quite a lot of it's in logic here and there. So in a way, Shulk's ideology was not enough to convince Egil from stopping. Anyways, right here is a very scary jump that we're going to barely make. There we go. 100% free and consistent. Yeah, there's a pretty sketchy jump there that looks very scary. Seems like you're going to fall, but as long as you hit the ledge there, it's 100% consistent.
That is probably one of the scariest jumps to see, but because there's such an easy corner to line yourself up in, it's basically 100% consistent as long as you know what you're doing.
Yeah, so we're now coming to the end of Agnirtha. Not really too much here. We picked up a landmark early so that way we can skip travel there later. So we have a lot of major stuff coming up here really soon. So now is a good time for probably 2 or 3 donations.
I don't have too many donations, but I do want to highlight, and it's neat being a host because Nami has given us some of these infographics, and I've been reading them. The average delay between when you begin to experience a mental illness or a mental health situation and treatment is 11 years, which kind of highlights one of the 3 pillars: the education and support, the awareness and advocacy of NAMI. Because the awareness side of things, I mean, whether it's Mental Health Month, Suicide Prevention Month, Mental Illness Awareness Week, NAMI partners with a whole wide range of companies and organizations to help get that information out there.
I guess with this all done, now we're coming up to probably casually what I find the hardest or second hardest fight of the game. That's going to be Gato 2. Because this fight is very rough. I'll go ahead and explain why this fight's so terrible.
Sure. So the big reason why this fight really sucks casually is that Gato has a lot of really strong AoE attacks that are ether-based, which if you're just playing through normally and not doing all the side content, you won't really have a good way to deal with. And on top of that, he summons in 2 adds, which are highly defensive enemies, and it will inflict you with lock-on, so you're not able to just focus him down super easily. Luckily, we have a ton of damage, so we're able to quickly clean him up, so that's not a problem for us here. And also something that's worth mentioning is, I guess we haven't really talked about this, but it is something that is relevant to this speedrun, is that we alluded to this, that you lose access to level up most of the Monado arts whenever you do Arts Inheritance. And the reason for that is that you don't actually get access to story arts in New Game Plus. So right there, you would have normally unlocked Final Cross on Fiora in a casual playthrough on New Game. However, because you're already supposed to have that on New Game Plus, you don't unlock it again. So because of that, a lot of the Monado arts, by which I mean everything that isn't Buster or Enchant, can't actually be leveled up for the speedrun, and that'll be relevant mostly in that we are stuck with a very low level Cyclone on Charla, so even though it is a powerful AoE art, it's not really that useful for the speedrun just because it's so low level that it doesn't deal as much damage.
Yeah, so a lot of stuff coming up here. We have a Yadaboth here, who is another auto-scroller. Essentially, we have to get him down below a certain health threshold, I think 35% or so. I guess 35% damage taken. That way he uses Catastrophe, otherwise he has a complete cycle of arts he'll use. Otherwise, yeah. That fight was one of those hopeless boss fights, so I'll let you explain a lot of the story stuff that's happening right now, because kind of not supposed to glow like that.
Yeah, so essentially, as Orph mentioned, Egil has his line of your blade not cut deep enough, implying that we were not able to convince him that war is not the right solution, that there is another way. So he has essentially taken himself into the Mechonis to become its new god, basically. He's going to take control of the Mechonis and wake it up and essentially use it to destroy the Bionis once and for all, as well as all the people living in it, is a way to essentially destroy what I don't know if the game is referred to at this point, but essentially what the game is referring to as the Curse of Zanza, or the cycle of destruction that Zanza, the giant, basically perpetually causes upon all other beings.
Yeah, so now we're going on to the Mechonis Core to try to stop him. So at this point in the game, I kind of want to make a mention about Egil's Mechon, which is named Yaldabaoth. A lot of Xenoblade Chronicles has a lot of connections to like Gnosticism in general, because there's Yaldabaoth, which is considered to be like the false god of sorts, kind of seen here because Malus is supposed to be the true god of Mechonis. Meanwhile, Egil kind of force control, becoming a Yaldabaoth. This also can be seen in terms like a form of a demiurge. That's going on to endgame spoilers since we're getting pretty late into the run, is that Zanza is seen as like the demiurge, the creator of the material world. Meanwhile, one of the premises about demiurge is that demiurge is generally oblivious to like a higher being, which is monad. And you can also see more ties there because monado, just add an O to the end of that. Yeah, so really oblivious to the true god behind, well, pretty much everything who has true control over the monado, which is spoiler alert, Ontos. So
it's just as I thought.
You can kind of see a lot of the ties there between Gnosticism and just Xenoblade Chronicles, and something worth looking into. So with this all done, we now have 2 very rough fights in a row. Then let you take over.
So for Apocrypha Generator, it's pretty simple as far as the execution, but we really want to get physical defense down because it will give itself a physical protect here, and we won't be able to one-shot if Dunban doesn't get it off. Didn't get it off here, so we're just going to have to kill it in an extra. Alright, it's not that big of a deal. But coming up here is probably the most technical fight of the run. It's maybe second, like up there with J-Face, but essentially it's one of the big reasons why Charlotte is used for this route. So to start things off, we're going to be focusing on keeping our allies by our side so they don't do anything stupid. And we're essentially just going to want to bring Yaldabaoth down to very low health so that he will activate his story progression part of the fight. If we move to the side here, Yaldabaoth will skip one of his 6-second long attacks. And
we got binded.
Oh, we got binded. And we'll instead move straight on to Energy Replenish. Unfortunately, we got inflicted with bind, so we're going to have to slowly run back over in front of him once it wears off. But the reason why Charlotte is used is because these energy devices are just far enough to where you need a 25-meter range art to hit all three of them from right in front of Yaldabaoth. And the reason why this is important is that it's the quickest way to destroy all of them, which you need to do to stop this forced vision and be able to finish off the fight. Charlotte is needed for this because Cyclone normally has 20 meters of range, but for these Charlotte, she gets 5 extra meters of range on ranged darts, allowing her to be able to destroy all of them. And then here we're just going to be spamming Buster to try and kill him as soon as the vision ends and he's inflicted with daze, and that is the end of the fight.
Yeah. It didn't really go super well though, because bind is pretty RNG in general. I think it's like a 25% chance for it being inflicted or so.
And also something worth mentioning is that Orph ran away after he was inflicted with bind. And it's basically, in this game, you have an animation that you get stuck in if you dodge attacks. And if you don't run, you can get essentially stun locked into that animation, and it's really unfortunate. Something that's happening in this fight is that Orph is using arts essentially to block the knockback of Zanza's attacks. And this is just a pretty quick fight where we're just going to kind of shred him with Fiora. This is the only fight she's used in for this run.
That's why you only see those arcs there, because don't be tempted with other things. That fight is mostly consistent. Sometimes you might be able to get a quick end if you manage to get lucky enough with getting the your talent gauge filled to maximum, because one of Fiora's special skills, which has like a small chance of your talent being instantly filled on an auto attack. It's something we're trying to hope for, but yeah, otherwise, second gear is there so that way we can actually use that to quickly end the fight. So a lot of stuff is happening right now. I'll go ahead and let you explain, because at this point in the game, a lot of story stuff is happening.
Yeah, so essentially after we defeated Egil and Yaldabaoth, Shulk essentially said, I'm not going to kill you, I'm going to keep fighting you and stopping you from doing what you're doing until I'm able to convince you otherwise. And this kind of makes Egil start to be a bit more sympathetic to our cause and start to agree with us. However, someone comes along who doesn't quite like the fact that this is happening, and Dixon quite literally shoots Shulk in the back, basically killing him. And it's at this point that it's revealed that Zanza is the spirit of the Monado itself, and has essentially been living inside of Shulk as he regained his power. Now that Shulk is no longer needed, he has exited Shulk's body and is now essentially threatening to destroy the world so that he can recreate it and continue his own perpetuation. During this time, Mayneth essentially takes control of Fiora, which was the fight that we did there, where she tries to stop Zanza and essentially defend us. But in doing so, she ends up giving up her own life. Fiora's still alive. It's only Mayneth that gave up her life. And now Zanza has access to both his own Monado and Mayneth's Monado. So things are looking pretty bad. He's getting ready to destroy Mechonis as Egil makes his last stand to try and slow him down as much as possible as we make our escape.
Create a world with no need for gods.
Yep, that is the iconic quote from the cutscene that Mayneth says just as she fades away. So that is our goal now, to create a world with no need for gods.
Now it's time for my personal favorite side quest. Personal favorite boss fight of this run, Serenity Telethia, which is no way totally RNG in every single aspect of it. I'll go ahead and let you explain why this fight is bad. I need to get
this fight is basically an auto scroll. There's a set list of arts that the Telethia will use before the fight ends. And that's fine. There's a lot of fights like that in this game. But for the most part, the enemies will only use 1 or 2 arts, and then it will just be over, and that's the end of it. However, as you can see here, Serenity Telethia, this fight goes on for a while, which means there's a lot of time to decide to walk around, or to do extra actions. And because of this, you can pretty easily lose quite a bit of time if you get really unlucky with what it wants to do. And you can have it just circle around you and waste a ton of time right at the end of the run. So it's pretty unfortunate, but overall, you'll usually only get 1, maybe 2 movements max, so it's not that big of a deal. It's just more of an annoyance than anything else.
Yeah, more often than not, you really can't save time in this fight, you can only lose time. Yeah, so this fight is a very long one because it takes like 3 times as long as any other Force Lost fights. I can't believe this it's a marathon luck because that's 2 attacks that we got hit from via Telethia. Because normally we were supposed to resist them all, but marathon luck. With this all done, we are now in the final chapter, so at this point the super bosses are available for us to fight. I'll be holding off until after the run just because I have a file set up explicitly for the super bosses because one of them is located in a very far away location. At this point, even more story stuff has occurred, and we're now back here in Colony 6. So now we're just going to be heading over to Fiora, who is a little bit away, so probably this will be a good time for Nations before things really pick back up again.
Not a problem. We've got a $25 donation from GT Now. Thanks for putting on this fundraiser, and best of luck to all the runners. And a $10 donation from the Altar Maven. It's $10, and it says another year, another round of wonderful RPGs, another chance to support a good cause, and most importantly, and I want you to remember this, bid wars. Bid wars are very important.
Yeah. Sadly, there's not really much bid war potential with this category, so I guess I'll go ahead and let you explain a lot of the story stuff coming up here because this is probably pretty much the last of the big plot stuff is revealed here.
Sure, so as we were fighting Serenity Telethia, there was a little bit of plot that happened there. Basically, at the top of the Bionis, there was a bunch of ether particles released into the air. And kind of the fate of the Hyantia that was in that, the Zohar-looking plaque that we talked about earlier, essentially says that it's the fate of the Telethia the Hyantia to be destroyed by the Telethia, more or less. And essentially what that means is that whenever they're exposed to high concentrations of ether, Hyantia transform into Telethia. However, Hyantia with enough Hom's blood in them that have that gene diluted will not turn to Telethia, which is why Melnia is still okay. And there will be a couple of Hyantia still around the world if you go around and do some side questing. However, for the most part, most of them have transformed into Telethia and are now essentially resetting the world to ether and killing off all of the remaining life so that all the ether will be available whenever Zanza reawakens the Bionis. The next thing that's happening is that we now know that Dixon, along with Lorithia, are the essentially people of the Trinity, who is essentially the most devout followers of Zanza and are essentially just waiting for the world to be destroyed so that they can take part in the new one. That is why this horde of Telethia is attacking us here, because we are the only people that are left that can stop it, and they're essentially just trying to get rid of us nice and easily so that they can just return the rest of the ether to the world. It's also during these couple of fights that we find out that Alvis, who's been along with us for quite a few things now, is the 3rd member of the Trinity and is also going to go off with Dixon and Lorithia to essentially help Zanza reset the world. So now we're going into the Bionis interior to chase them down through the interior and then through Prison Island afterwards to essentially try to stop them and save the world.
Yeah, so now we're pretty much in the endgame portion of the game. In a way, I kind of like to consider this portion like the airship, like once you get like an airship in Final Fantasy VII, something like that. I guess in most other RPGs, is that most of the world kind of opens up. At this point, much of the remainder of Bionis is opened up. Yeah, sure, Mykonos is all closed up, but at this point, you can access the later portions of Tephra normally instead of having to do a fancy clip thing. Now it's kind of the intended time for you to go into location and all that fun stuff. So heading on into the interior. Interior is famous for 3 reasons. Number 1, it's a maze. Some people really don't like this area. I know Arcanite really likes this area.
Yeah,
Personally,
I pride myself on being the only person in existence that likes this area.
Yeah. Next famous thing about this area is that there is a certain item here known as the Black Liver Bean. The Black Liver Bean is a very rare item. It's like a 6% spawn rate in certain areas. But for the most part, they're pretty rare. The main areas you can find them like at the end pathways, like right over there, and off in the far distance over there. The best area I would say is like the second lung, which is the lung you don't visit throughout the game. Thank you, Nebula. Yeah, this has actually been getting some very bad marathon luck. Just I'm getting low rolls on everything. Yeah. And the third reason is that the boss here is also very famous for being very annoying. So one last thing before I let Arcanite kind of explain the gimmick of the next fight, since I'll go by really quick, is that the Nebula here, especially the jellyfish-looking one, they have a huge priority with their model, and they extend pretty much all the way down to the ground. And because of that, you'll easily get pushed aside. And I've actually had a run before that I get pushed off because those jellies just pushing me away. And falling off into the ether is not a good thing because it sets you back by quite a bit. So go ahead and take it away with the thing coming up here with the boss fight.
So the upcoming boss fight has the gimmick, and this is something that's really difficult for a lot of casual players because it's not well conveyed, is that whenever she spawns 4 nebulas, those nebulas will give her immense physical defense.
What?
Until you defeat them. I believe it actually gives 100% physical defense.
I'm muted right now, but they very frequently ask me to do this.
But it gives it basically 100% physical defense that will make it so all your physical arts only do 1 damage. So for the sake of this run, because we don't have any powerful ether arts, we essentially need to kill off the nebula, which we're going to be doing by spamming out, I believe, 3 cyclones. And then once that goes down, her physical defense will drop from 100% to negative 100%, so we're doing double damage, and we'll be able to then just one-shot her with a super buffed art.
Yeah, if you're having difficulties with the fight, Melia is a very, very useful character for that fight just because of the buffs you can give your party members, and also just being able to dispatch the Nebula, because once you're able to get those Nebula down, then you can just spam topples and try to topple lock her. And that's the strategy for a new game speedruns, because at this point they're only level 55 for a new game casual on the current patch. So yeah, it's a very sketch fight to say the least, but because the topple being so powerful, you don't really need to worry about that. But
I
here
believe
we're
it
just like, alright,
yeah, I'll let you go and finish.
Enjoy this battle.
Alright. There we go. Yeah, I just spamming 3 cyclones there, letting the Nebula use her self-destruct art, which reflects the PDD onto Orpheolus, then sending up the 1-2-3 combo to ensure the one-shot. So only that felt good for all those who have struggled with that fight.
I was going to make the comment, though, that on the topic of Melia being very good for that fight casually, I believe that in a very old version of the original Xenoblade route, Melia was actually used for that fight, though that's been phased out for Dunban strats for quite a while now at this point. But I do remember that whenever I was first, a very long time ago, that Melia was used as the main character for the run, and that she was used for that fight because yeah, it just makes the fight a lot easier mostly with summon ice and other elementals that just deal with the nebula super easily.
I guess with this all done, we're now heading on through Prison Island for the final dungeon of the game. I mean, it looks like final dungeon material. There's ominous blue glows, there's a giant dragon skull up ahead. I don't know, it looks like a final dungeon. Plus we're getting pretty close to the estimate too, so yeah, I think this is probably going to be the final dungeon of the game. Here, the main gimmick here is that there's only 1 landmark here. We just passed it, and the next one won't be until after we're 60% through the dungeon, after 3 boss fights. It's honestly a kind of a dumb decision. I wish they put one here at the entrance to the Coliseum, but oh well. Yeah, so heading on through the banquet hall, we're heading on into the later portions of the run, so I think this would probably be a good time for some last-minute donations as we're getting pretty close to the end.
Well, I'll take a couple seconds here just to remind everybody that any donations, whether it's $5, it's $15, and I should make sure it's a $5 minimum donation. It puts you in to win a wire controller for the Switch, and a $15 donation will put you in for a running for Super Retro Trio Plus 3-in-1 system. It is a beautiful thing. They've been donated by Retrobit Gaming and Game KMD. So any of those donations, if it's a $5, it's $15, those are the minimum donation amounts for those 2 products, and it's just really, really fantastic to have those on the docket. There's actually a lot of prizes, and we'll be revealing some of those as we keep going.
Yeah, so now we're going on through a little bit of a boss rush here. We have 3 bosses we need to go to before we can head to the upper portions of Prison Island. The first one here is going to be Aubart, we just use an art, and then that's Demon Pavosk, another quick one. Now we're heading on into the
What's up?
the Chase Dixon part. Here there's going to be a major thing I want to mention, though, probably the reason why Vine Clip got clipped out, is that if you clip through this wall up ahead and you go ahead and press raise the bone pillar, you actually soft lock your game. You can no longer actually beat it because the trigger to activate the boss fight is right here. So you need to press that before you can activate the bone pillar because of the how the flags work. So in the end, that fancy fancy flag thing that they were trying to go for kind of bit them in the butt. All right, we actually got the super fall, so it's a little bit of a hard setup, but if you maneuver your movement just correctly, you'll be able to fall right down to the bottom, saving a fall animation there. Actually, a little bit of a hard one to do.
Now that we're in I'll let you go ahead and finish.
Yeah, so we're raising the bone pillar, so now we're able to head up to the top. So I guess another little bit of a route change that happened in Xenoblade is that originally we used to go along the bone pillar and try to go into a hole-in-one to make our way back into back to the arena where the next boss fight will be. However, though, it was discovered by Tyler that it's a 12-second time save by backtracking through the Behemoth's Den, or to head back to the arena just because of how the Behemoth's Den's kind of set up. And plus it saves quite a bit of walking too, since you have to go all the way across the arena, then going back. Here we can just go over here to the arena, and then we can just fall right over to where we need to go.
Yeah, one of the things that I want to make mention of is that now that we're in Prison Island 2, this is where the trading for collectibles would open up for you in a casual playthrough, and it's also where the new game runs of this game would be performing party swap. As we mentioned before, you're pretty under-leveled pretty much in every category whenever you're getting to this point, so by using party swap, they're able to get a level 90 party instead of I believe probably in the 70s in normal mode, or around level 50 in casual mode, and you're able to jump straight up to level 90, so you go from being relatively under-leveled to severely over-leveled. So even though that party is stuck with Dunban, Ricky, Charlotte, which isn't a great party, the level advantage is more than enough to make up for it, and that's the party they run for the rest of runs in New Game.
Yeah, so right here we're taking down Master Aubart. Now with this, we are finally able to actually get ourselves the next landmark. Here, at long last, it's been so long, so yeah. I guess going over to the whole gimmick with those fights for much of the end game for the use of party swap is that the main thing about those fights is that there's a lot of debuffs that Ricky uses, and Ricky's main art that he uses is Say Sorry, which deals additive damage for every single debuff the enemy has. Since Ricky has a lot from the art team flicks, Dunban has like physical defense down with one of his arts. He has a like a break, a slow, and all that stuff. You can stack it up for massive damage where you'll be able to melt through much of a boss's health in one attack with it. Especially useful in casual because before doing party swap, you're only level 55 and we're fighting like level 75 enemies at this point in the game. Yeah, so it definitely gives you a lot of level advantage there. I guess heading on across the bridge here, we're no longer taking the abridged version through Prison Island. There's actually one very well-hid unique monster here on Ravina Bridge, and that's a Fiendish Auburn. In order to summon Fiendish Auburn, we have a wave of 3 dinos you need to take down. Once you have defeated these 3 Babel dinos, a set of Babel Bargs will come down the staircase here. Once you defeat them, Fiendish Auburn and a couple of I guess ram-looking enemies will come down there too, ready to fight. I think they're the only types of those ram-like enemies in the entire game, so a very well-hid unique monster, and probably one that not many people actually know about. So with this all done, we're now ready to go on in and take down the final fights of the game. So probably a good time for last-minute donations if any have come in.
Well, just want to keep everybody aware of where we're headed after this run, because it looks like we're heading up to the estimate pretty quick here. It means that we're going to be heading into Valkyrie Profile, Covenant of the Plume, which is being covered by Sniper Wave, which is going to be a great run next. And just reminding everybody that we are raising money for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And if you want to take a look and get people out there on social media, use the hashtags QFGHH2, that's Questing for Glory, Hope and Healing 2, and also NAMI's hashtag Together for MH, Together for Mental Health. It's a very important thing that we're all kind of learning is a lot more widespread than many of us may realize. And awareness is one of those things that we want to make sure we get the word out on.
Right. One thing I kind of want to mention, though, going up this tower here is that there's a unique monster here that loves to try to follow you up. However, though, because of how the tower is structured, it just kind of panics there and just been it just kind of goes around in circles before leaving you alone. So yeah, I guess with this all done, anything you want to plug, Arcanite, as we head to the final parts of the run here?
I don't think so. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of. I was gonna say I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of this throughout the marathon. But if you're all interested in this run, stop by the speedrun Discord, ask questions. We'll be more than happy to help. If you go to any of the Xeno game speedrun leaderboards on speedrun.com, the Discord will be linked. Drop by, tell us, that you want to get involved, and we'll be more than happy to help you on your way. I love talking about this game. I know a lot of other people do, and we're always happy to have more runners.
All right then. So here we're heading over to Dragon King Alcar. We're just kind of running away from him. Yeah. So gimmick about Alcar. Okay. How was it supposed to happen? I was somehow out of range. Oh well, it's a little bit of a meme fight there. So essentially what we're trying to do is just hug the outskirts here so Alcar can try to walk up to us so that way we don't have to run quite as far when we're done. But I think that work out there. Alcar's main gimmick is that he has a heck of a lot of spike there, so we just go for the one shot, otherwise you have to deal with a lot of spike damage there. Alright then, so with this all done, now is the point of no return. So once we head up this teleporter here, we have to go up. So this is the only cutscene in the game where we cannot skip because there's a text box here that defaults to no if we match too fast or if we try to skip. Just to make sure that that this is the point of no return. Alright then.
Yes,
I guess with this all done, now heading up to the final fights, and our first fight is going to be against Dixon. Dixon's main gimmick for this fight is that he has a paralysis debuff. Whenever you auto-attack him, he inflicts you with paralysis, which lowers your attention, which is kind of like the big thing. It also lowers your auto-attack rate, but really, we fight him so fast that he doesn't even have time to really notice that he is being melted through.
Yeah, the first phase is going to be another one of the scripted fights. We essentially just want to lower him down to half health as quickly as possible, then make sure we're close enough for him to use his art that will end the phase. Phase 2, there's no cap on his health, so we're able to just kind of knock him out as quickly as we can.
Yeah, that was a
very quick fight. Usually he'll use an auto attack or an art first, but that was very good.
Alright, and then for this fight, we're doing something a little bit differently. We're using a full combo here to ensure that we get the one shot on Dixon, because Dixon has quite a lot of health, all things considered. Also, one thing I was going to mention a long time ago, but I forgot, is I set up Fiora in a very particular fashion so that way she looks a bit like Cosmos from Xenosaga, on purpose because Cosmos and Fiora it's a little bit similar. Yeah, Fiora is a little bit of a hybrid between like Cosmos and Ellie from Xenogears and Saga. So now we're going through Memory Space, which is the very true last area of the game. The song that plays here, I guess, for the enemies here are unique. They play Zanza's World, which is, I find, a very underrated tune. I kind of like it, but you don't hear it at all because you can just walk past the enemies and you don't really have to worry about it. So we're going through space. I don't know. These planets are pretty similar and they seem like they're leading up to something. You think so?
Probably not. I mean, this game takes place on the world of Two Titans. Why would this have anything to do with our solar system?
Yeah. For those who have played the game know what this is probably referencing. What are you going to say, Arcanite?
I was going to say that navigating through memory space can be a little bit awkward just simply because there are a bunch of invisible walls on these curved paths that can make it so that the exact path you need to take isn't inherently clear. For the second one, we actually have a pretty good visual cue by just running towards the Teletia's wing, but the first one can definitely be a bit awkward to try and get the optimal line on.
Alright. Yeah, it looks like this is not going to be under 3 hours, but it's still a pretty good run, all things considered. Especially since we had to detour to fight Turtle, Rop Art, and everything, and Marathon Luck. It's still a pretty good run, all things considered. Oh yeah, so heading over here to the final fight. This fight is a little bit glitchy on older patches because if you switch party members between phases, the game kind of bugs out and could potentially soft lock. Thankfully, future patches did actually fix that, like certain Ice do, and Future Connected in general. Yeah, so the first fight we're doing pretty much 3 different strategies. The first one we're going to be using is that we're going to be using Magnum and 2 Busters. Try to get the one shot there. There we go. See, he doesn't have too much health. This phase, though, Xanta has a lot of health and is actually a very difficult phase thanks to his huge health pool. But thankfully, with the full setup, we don't have to worry about it too much. I know that on No Art's Inheritance, that fight can be a little bit annoying because he likes to move around. I agree, how. So get ready on time since time is coming up on the last hit. All right, then. So 3, 2, 1, and time. Here we go.
Nice.
What was the final time there?
Nice. I have 2 hours, 59 minutes, and 57 seconds on the timer.
Nice.
Right.
Sub 3 with the rope bar fight's really good.
Yeah. I think that was like 3 hours on the dot, too. So that was actually really good. I was hoping for sub 3, and we managed to do that even with rock bars. Yeah, so if you enjoy this run, feel free to check out the Discord, but we have a little bit of a bounty hunt coming up now since we have beat the game. Time for the bonus incentive, and that is super bosses. If you thought the fights here were meme, you haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah, for anyone who's complaining that there was too much walking in this run, there's going to be a decent bit of some pretty amusing fights coming up, so.
So yeah. I guess we're going to get started with the hardest fight here too, and that's going to be Avalanche Odyssey, which we're going to get into the main gimmick of the fights coming up. Avalanche Odyssey is first on this route just because he has different setup, and plus he's a Blizzard spawn, which is probably the hardest spawn of the game.
Yeah, Avalanche obviously only spawns at night during blizzards in a very out-of-the-way location, so.
Yeah, that's why I have this all set up, so. With this, let's get started on Avalanche Odyssey, so. Okay, it looks like he didn't respawn, so.
Yeah, something else.
That kind of sucks, but yeah.
Something else that's worth mentioning is that unique monsters that you have already killed only have a 30% chance of respawning on your save file. So it's a little bit annoying to get them to spawn sometimes, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, so the first thing that we're doing here is that we're filling our talent gauge to max. This is that way the fights are more consistent here. Alright, need one more. That's for safety. Yeah, so the thing about Happy Happy is that Ricky needs to be at high tension in order to actually use it. Otherwise, if other characters were to use Happy Happy, it wouldn't be too much of a thing. But yeah. So let's see if Odyssey comes now. It's like a 30% respawn rate.
You want me to talk about the gimmick of Avalanche Odyssey real quick?
Yeah.
So casually, Avalanche Odyssey is a enemy that's notorious for just absolutely stomping you whenever you accidentally find your way up here. And the reason for that is that he has an instant death spike. In this game, instant death is a debuff that will deal your maximum HP and damage. Luckily, it can be mitigated with some gems, specifically Divine Protect or the more useful debuff resist. But it's something that's essentially you need to have it in order to do this fight. And then during a casual playthrough, you would also run into some issues of his auras. At 60% health, he activates a Crazed Aura, which will give him a Strength and Haste boost, and then at 30% HP, he will activate a Awakened Aura, which will give him 4 extra levels, which will boost all of his stats. Luckily, though, as you can see here, we have a pretty good strat to make sure that we don't run into any of those issues. If you want to explain the strat, Orph.
Yeah, so the main strat here is that we're building up the talent as soon as possible so that way we can force a break onto Avalanche Odyssey. That way we can go for the topple. And at this point, because the cooldown with Charlotte's Cyclone being so short, we can instantly chain together attacks. One other thing to mention about Minato Arts and chain attacks is that they don't deplete immediately. So we can instantly chain busters into each other, and we can just use them over and over again in the same chain attack. So it's actually a really cool thing to do. It's very overpowered too. Also, I'm getting extremely lucky with this setup too.
Might actually just kill him without really needing to spend much time on the topple lock.
Yeah. There we go. One chain attack, Avalanche Odyssey. Alright then. That fight went way better than I thought it would.
A lot better than in practice, too.
Oh yeah, that fight took like a long time in practice today, the other day too. With this all done, we're changing up our equipment a little bit so that way we give everyone enough spike defense. heading on into the next fights because three of the five super bosses have a pretty high what do I know? You could probably take that off for another spike. So a lot of the remaining enemies, they have very high spike defense. Because of this, we're just stacking up spike defense on everyone, so that way we don't have to worry about getting spiked to death. Because one of the fights coming up has a huge spike attack.
Yeah, most notable of them is Blizzard Belgazos, who has a down spike that deals 2,540 health, I believe, every time you hit him. So that fight is pretty much impossible to utilize Topple without spike defense. And then the other two have some pretty nasty proximity spikes, so...
Alright then, so with this all done, there's one other unique monster here that's I can spawn here, and that's Final Marcus. Some people consider him a super boss, some people might not. I personally consider him a super boss because he's level 100, and plus he's just pretty much free fodder for the next fight, so... Oh no! Yeah, so Final Marcus' main gimmick is that he has a spike attack, and also he has a, at the start of battle he'll use one of two auras. He'll either give him a strength buff or a defense buff. Really, we don't care, we just spam attacks. So yeah, so that was that fight. Now we're going on to the next fight, which is why we really need a spike defense up to maximum. Yeah, Art's Inheritance is indeed broken. Just double checking, making sure spike defense is at maximum, especially for this fight. So, probably as we're trying to reload this next super boss, we can go ahead and probably explain the gimmick of Blizzard Belgazos.
So Blizzard Belgazos has a gimmick where if he is during a blizzard, all of his, or not all, but most of his attacks will receive secondary effects. Rex Poison will deal double damage, Rex Gore will inflict instant death, and Rex Roar will inflict Pierce, which essentially negates all of your armor. So in a blizzard, he is extremely dangerous, and as mentioned before, he has a very nasty down spike, which is the reason why we need the spike defense for this fight. However, he has extremely low agility, which makes him relatively easy to hit with a physical party compared to the other super bosses.
Yeah, so the Belgazos is going to be a bit of a meme here. Once again, the main strategy is just building up our talent gauge max. That way we can spam Buster here. Dunban should hopefully be starting to do things. There we go. Oh no, a vision.
Also, an extra note for people who play this game casually, Blizzard Belgazos only has a defense side from the front and back. So if you hit him from the side, he'll actually take more damage than the other directions because he has, I believe, 60% physical defense and 40% ether defense from front and back. So it can make a pretty noticeable difference in damage.
Yeah, another thing to mention though about this fight though is you can probably explain the overflow.
Yeah, so as you can see here, the spike damage being done to Charlotte, it says 9, but there's no damage being done. And this is because of another glitch known as spike defense overflow. Anytime an enemy has some sort of a counter spike, either down spike or just a normal counter spike, if you have over 100% spike defense, in terms of 100% from gems and then some spike defense skills linked, the game will essentially say, oh, so you have, let's say, 150% spike defense. That means you should be taking 150% less damage, and the game interprets that as healing you as 50% of the spike. This only works with counter spikes, it doesn't work with proximity spikes, but for some reason the game gets really confused and the display is 9. As you can see over there on the left, Shulk is still taking 0 from the spike, because the glitch is not active for him.
Yeah, so otherwise Blizzard Belgazos is just about gone. At this point I could probably just spam Buster instantly. And my attack's not building up as fast as I'd like to, but yeah, that was Blizzard Belgazos, hobbled down into nothingness. So next up we only have 2 super bosses left. Our first one's going to be here on Wreckage Beach. So this next fight's also a little bit of an interesting gimmick. I'll go ahead and let you explain while I move equipment over.
Here, so for this upcoming fight, the first thing of note is that it is a Mechon. We know that Egil said that Yaldabaoth is the strongest Mechon ever built, but he actually was just lying to us. This is the strongest Mechon ever built. And essentially, the big gimmick of this fight is that he will open up with a very high range. He has a very large line of sight, and he will open up the fight with a very long range attack called Laser, which is a pretty strong ether attack. And if you get a vision, you can deal with it appropriately, but if you don't get a vision, it can definitely essentially do a ton of damage to your entire party, and it's really dangerous. It can be really dangerous. Luckily, we get a vision here, so we should be able to deal with it appropriately, by which I mean hopefully just toppling him before he ever gets it off.
Yeah, and plus since we got the buster damage buff to our Monado will build, sorry, Party Gauge will build incredibly fast too, so with this all done, yeah, Ancient Daedala is not going to last much longer. Yeah, so pretty much the reason why we're stacking up so much is because we're using a Topple Duration Plus gem, which increases the duration quite a bit. It's not really so much for Daedala, but it's mostly for like Avalanche Odyssey, since Avalanche Odyssey has a very large resistance to Topple and its duration is cut in half. So, I guess with that, it's Econ bashing time.
I was going to make another comment. I mentioned Crazed earlier, and one of the other reasons why it's important for us to keep a long topple going for this is that if an enemy uses the Crazed Aura, they become immune to break and topple. So if they activate the aura, you wouldn't be able to topple them anymore.
Alright, and that was Ancient Daedala also melted with these. So with this all done, now it's time for the last unique monster, which is going to be fought completely differently compared to the others. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is that... Yeah. First thing that we're going to be doing is that, instead of weapon power, actually, I'm going to remove physical defense down. Where is it? Here we go. Topple Plus. We're giving Topple Plus to Dunban, and then putting, I guess, physical defense down over onto Charla. So that way Charla can do some extra work for the next fight. Go ahead and let you explain the big thing about this next fight in terms of the mechanics that go behind the glitch going on.
So there's going to be a very different glitch that's going to be used for Despotic Arsene. Something known as Demon Slayer glitch, and the reason why we're using it for Arsene is that he is the easiest super boss to perform it on. And the short version of how this glitch works is that if there is a large group of enemies and you use Topple Plus with Demon Slayer, the game gets pretty confused as to how much topple duration to give. So every time it gives the next enemy its topple, it will give it exponentially more topple. So as you can see, we're getting a really big group of enemies here, which means that whenever we kill one of them with Demon Slayer, enemies are going to get a pretty long topple. So
as you can see right here, yeah, everyone's kind of on the ground for a very long time, and that gauge is depleting extremely slowly. And because of that, we can actually just start walking around. We can go ahead and hit run, and we're free to do whatever we want. So we can just run around the entire place and everything. Ideally, we would want to like build up enough party gauge for another set, but for the sake of timing, we're just going to head and play Arsene here as he's on the ground, contemplating all his life decisions.
Yeah, this glitch was actually in the original Xenoblade Chronicles as well, but as far as I know, it wasn't actually discovered until about 2 weeks after Definitive Edition came out. Then people went back to the original relatively recently and realized that the glitch was also in that one, so... It has some different properties between the two. For example, in Definitive Edition, is Orpheolus showing that you can literally just walk off and the enemy will never disengage, but in the original, the enemies will disengage if you go too far away. This has the funny side effect that if you get too many enemies in combat in Definitive Edition, the game will start to lag and will eventually crash.
Yeah, otherwise that's pretty much about it for the super bosses. Hopefully y'all enjoyed this incentive being met. Now, to wrap it all up, Dunban stabbing a bunny like a homicidal maniac. So hopefully you all enjoyed this one. Hopefully you're all feeling the powers of Art's Inheritance and enjoyed this fun and chaotic series of events that went down. So this is an Orpheolus. Thank you all so much for watching this era, and hopefully you all enjoy the rest of Resting for Glory, Hope and Healing 2, benefiting Nami. But yeah, so thank you all so much for tuning into this chaotic event.
This has been a really fun speedrun to get to know and to get to watch, and it's great to see that so much time, care, and explanations have been going into the commentary. This has been, it's been a joy. So, runner, commentator, you guys knocked it out of the park. Thank you for showing this off.
You're welcome.
Thanks. I love talking about this game, so I'm always happy to get an excuse to do so.
Nice.
And I guess one last thing to wrap things up, the power of Ryan Time. We got some planets on the cliff there, if the game will let me lock on. Any other unfortunate souls, just one last explanation about the powers of Ryan Time and just how Art's Inheritance can be really good for like 100% is that there's quite a lot of side quests that have like enemies very far away, so we can just snap them from like halfway across the map. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff to go into Xenoblade Art's Inheritance. If you ever want to give this a try, feel free to come into the Xenoblade Discord. We're more than happy to help you with the setting up Art's Inheritance and some confusions that go on, and some other fun options too. And if you also want to get into speedrunning, because there's more to Xenoblade 2, there's also the other Xenoblade games. There's also new game categories, new game plus, and some time attack stuff there too that Arknight's really been doing a lot of work with too. So thank you all so much for coming out, and see you all next time.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here, guys. And just a reminder, we are here supporting NAMI. That's the National Alliance on Mental Illness. It's the largest grassroots mental health organization whose work is focused around 3 pillars. I have talked about 2 of them, awareness and advocacy, but there is the third one, education and support. And what does that mean? Well, it means that via their 48 state offices, it's almost every single one of them, and more than 650 affiliates, NAMI offers a host of signature programs, presentations, support groups that are available, and they are completely free of charge. This includes a national helpline, and that national helpline is there at 1-800-950-NAMI. That's 1-800-950-6264. And that's the helpline. But there's also resources. There's compassionate, understanding, trained volunteer, and who's ready from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for anybody who wants to call in. These programs, they do help. And we're raising funds to help this because it reaches more than 300,000 people a year. These are life-changing opportunities for education, for connection, for support, for personal growth. And that's something we all need, because NAMI really does want to make sure that everybody, especially now, realizes that you are not alone, and it is okay to not be okay right now. So do not hesitate. Reach out for yourself, reach out to help others, and make sure as you're reaching out, if you want to help spread the news of this marathon and what we're doing here as far as raising funds, Questing for Glory is the marathon. This is Hope and Healing 2021 edition. The hashtag is QFGHH2 if you want to mention that on social media. And also, NAMI wants us to make sure we're mentioning that they have their own hashtag Together4MH. Together4MH, we'll be mentioning that. And let's see here. It looks like there's some more glitches showing off here, which is always fun. I love bonus content.
Yeah, I'm just showing off my clip there real quick since you got a little bit of time.
Nice.
Is there any particular cutscene before we transition to the next run, or do you have any time for that?
I do not know the answer to that, but I do know our next run coming up here is Valkyrie Profile. It's the Covenant of the Plume, and we do have some more incentives also, and some challenge incentives that are going to be coming up here. So take a look at Final Fantasy XII. It looks like we've already met the Mega Boss fight, but we still have the option to fight Rickon to race Rickon, not fight Rickon. But let's make sure we hit that incentive too. That's got some ways to go, but there are a bunch of nickel and dime ones here that have really come close to hitting theirs. Like the Lost Odyssey, unlock all the royal seals, only needs $5 extra there. Great to see. And it looks like I'm getting the news that we unfortunately don't have any time to show any more cutscenes or any other things off. It looks like High Spirit's telling me that it's time for us to move on.
All right, thank you for having us, and see you all next time. And hopefully you all enjoy the rest of this marathon with all the wacky stuff going on too.
All right, and good luck to the rest of the runners, and
and good luck.
Enjoy the marathon. It's going to be a great time. I'm looking forward to a lot of the upcoming runs.
Yeah, there's going to be some good stuff going on here. Yeah. And as I said, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, social media accounts, you can catch them at Facebook at NAMI, N-A-M-I. On Twitter, they are at NAMI Communicate. On Instagram, at NAMI Communicate. And they even have Tumblr, notalone.nami.org and oktotalk.org. Definitely want to make sure we send out a shout out to our restreamers also for our foreign language streams. Our German restream is at twitch.tv.germensch. And our Japanese stream is at twitch.tv/Japanese_restream. So definitely head over there, show some love. And, well, I am finished up with this as my hosting gig, and I will be passing things over and passing this torch. You will definitely see me later on in the run, though. So it's been a great pleasure so far to be a part of this. And let's keep watching this and also raising the funds for this fantastic organization, the National Alliance on Mental Illness.